Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Glinting coldly, suddenly flew toward him from behind. Conan's voice rang out. I won't let you harm Nagato, Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya's expression changed slightly, and he teleported away. The 2 sages quickly shot out their tongues, taking the unconscious guy and Naruto with them. Conan. Jiraiya turned to see the man with a one-eyed mask standing beside Conan. Is that? Chapter 264, who knows? Obito let out a dry, hoarse laugh. Well, what are you going to do now, Conan? He turned to look at her. Madara, don't forget that your goals align with ours. Conan said coldly. Although Nagato has temporarily lost his combat ability, the enemy is now left with only Jiraiya-sensei. Go and grab Naruto. Oh? So you still need me to step in? Obito said noncommittally. If it weren't for me earlier, you would have been caught in that Genjutsu too, and Nagato would be dead. Conan fell silent. Indeed, although she had used a paper clone to deceive Naruto's tailed beast ball earlier, she hadn't been able to escape the range of that terrifying sound-based Genjutsu in time. In the end, it was Obito who used his space-time ninjutsu to take her away and then brought her back in time to save Nagato. But Conan looked at Jiraiya's current state. The 2 toad sages had disappeared, and Jiraiya had completely exited sage mode. Now, he stood in front of the unconscious Naruto and Guy, still panting heavily. If Obito didn't step in, even though Jiraiya-sensei had expended a lot of energy earlier, after the continuous battles, her own chakra was nearly depleted. In a one-on-one fight, she had little chance of winning. Even if she could barely defeat Jiraiya-sensei, reinforcements from the leaf would arrive soon. Thinking this, Conan coldly stared at Obito and said firmly. Only if you act now can we successfully take the 9 tails. Don't forget our shared goal. Alright, I get it. Obito raised his hands in surrender. Is it coming? Jiraiya's expression was grave. Naruto and Guy were out of the fight, leaving only me to hold the line. The other one is Obito, right? Based on the intel, it's definitely him. A space-time Mangekyo Sharingan? This is troublesome. Jiraiya thought about this, assessed his own condition, and forced himself to stay alert and ready. Have you 2 finished discussing, Conan, Obito? His tone was light, and he made exaggerated gestures with his hands. But no matter what you decide, as long as I, Jiraiya, am here, I won't let you take Naruto. Though he spoke confidently, Jiraiya wasn't entirely sure. He could only hope that the Leaf's reinforcements would arrive soon. But hearing the distant explosions from the village, Jiraiya knew that Tsunade and the others were still fighting. Well then. Jiraiya bit his right thumb and drew a blood mark on his left palm. Summoning jutsu. Poof. White smoke rose. Ribbit. A toad with thick iron armor on its arms appeared. Protect those 2 while I fight, Iron Arm Toad. Jiraiya gave the order and turned back to keep an eye on Conan and Obito. Ribbit. The Iron Arm Toad seemed to be a quiet one, silently standing guard in front of Naruto and Guy. Having prepared, Jiraiya didn't initiate the fight. He knew his goal was to protect Naruto and Guy. All he needed to do was hold the line and wait for reinforcements. Still not making a move? Conan, who was also guarding the unconscious Nagato, urged Obito. Oh dear, oh dear. The blood-puppet Obito muttered to himself. Although my master has made a deal with the Leaf, I can't be too obvious in helping them. That black Zetsugai is definitely watching from somewhere. If I slip up, things will go south. Don't rush me. Obito said, pulling out a chain and gripping it tightly. I'll go grab the 9 tails now. With that, he swung the chain and charged forward. Jiraiya pulled out a kunai and held it firmly, his body slightly crouched, ready to defend. Whoosh! Obito threw the chain, which passed between Jiraiya and the Iron Arm Toad, aiming for Naruto lying on the ground behind them. Clang! The Iron Arm Toad blocked the chain with its armored arms. Jiraiya, however, remained in place, His eyes locked on Obito's movements. Obito retracted the chain and charged straight at Jiraiya. Jiraiya stepped forward, slashing with his kunai, but it passed right through Obito's body as expected. Obito didn't slow down. His body passed through Jiraiya and then through the iron arm toad, effortlessly reaching Naruto. He bent down and grabbed Naruto by the collar. Now! Jiraiya turned and threw his kunai, then immediately closed the distance. Not so fast. Obito sneered, letting the kunai pass through his head as he grabbed Naruto's collar again. Let go. Ribbit. Jiraiya and the iron arm toad attacked from both sides. Got him. Obito lifted Naruto with one hand and leaped into the air. Jiraiya jumped as well, quickly forming hand seals. Ninja art, lion's mane technique. His hair instantly grew longer, strands of it whipping like mad snakes, rapidly lashing out at Obito. At the same time, the iron arm toad jumped up and blocked Obito's path from behind, swinging its armored arms at his head. Obito ignored Jiraiya's hair and turned to kick, colliding with the iron arm toad's arm. Whoosh! A giant shuriken made of paper spun rapidly through the air, slicing through Jiraiya's hair before dispersing into countless smaller paper shurikens, all aimed at Jiraiya. Come here. Conan threw another giant paper shuriken. By now, Obito had used the iron arm toad's arm as a springboard, leaping even higher into the air. Ha! Jiraiya shouted, and his hair grew even longer. Some of it wrapped around his body to block the paper shurikens, while the rest shot toward Obito in the air. Here. Obito used the chain to bind Naruto, then tossed Naruto's body toward Conan with one hand, allowing Jiraiya's hair to pass through his own body. Mission accomplished. Naruto. Jiraiya quickly turned, his hair also changing direction to reach for Naruto in the air. Jiraiya-sensei, the nine tails is ours now. Conan manipulated a dense swarm of paper to block Jiraiya's hair, while simultaneously wrapping Naruto's body in paper. Not yet. Jiraiya formed hand seals again. Toad oil bullet. A large amount of sticky oil shot from his mouth, drenching the paper Conan was controlling. Give him back. The paper, soaked in oil, lost its control. Jiraiya's hair quickly extended, wrapping around Naruto's body and pulling him back. I'm still here. Obito suddenly appeared, grabbing the chain around Naruto and slashing through Jiraiya's hair with a kunai. Whoosh! A finger blade wrapped in sharp wind-style chakra shot out from the forest like lightning, aiming straight for the back of Obito's head. Reinforcements are here. Jiraiya breathed a sigh of relief. TCH. Obito phased out again, letting the finger blade pass through his head. Naruto fell heavily to the ground. A black thread snaked across the ground, connecting to Naruto's shadow. In the next moment, Naruto's body rolled to the side, dodging Obito's outstretched hand. Chapter 265, Meat Tank. A massive, rolling ball of flesh shot out from the forest, barreling straight toward Obito. TCH. Obito had no choice but to maintain his intangible state. Mind-body switch technique. Conan, who was about to make her move, instinctively dodged Ino's secret technique. Seizing the opportunity, Jiraiya's hair extended once more, wrapping around Naruto's body. The shadow connected to Naruto's body disconnected and Jiraiya's hair swiftly dragged Naruto back to his side. You came just in time. Jiraiya praised with a smile. Jiraiya-sama. Asuma, along with Shikamaru and Ino, jumped out from the forest. Asuma-sensei. On the other side, Choji, who had just exited his meat tank state, picked up Asuma's weapon and returned to his teammates. Is this all the reinforcements you have? The single eye visible beneath Obito's mask glowed red. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like you'll be much help. Asuma took his weapon from Choji and scrutinized Obito. Having seen the Akatsuki's intel, he couldn't reconcile this man with the Obito he remembered. Obito? His tone was hesitant. It's hard to imagine you've become like this. Humphrey, don't act like we're close. What do you know about me, Asuma-sama? Obito's hoarse voice carried a cold sneer. Hiss. Asuma took a deep drag of his cigarette and blinked. Was this the same Obito who used to enthusiastically help old ladies cross the street every day? Exhale. White smoke escaped his lips as he spoke with a touch of weariness. Don't say that. We were classmates at the academy for 6 years, after all. Obito scoffed. Oh? I was just a loser back then. I wasn't close to someone like you, Asuma-sama. Obito. Don't let them stall for time. Conan couldn't help but interject coldly. Something felt off to her. Why had they suddenly stopped fighting and started reminiscing about old times? And why had Obito suddenly admitted his identity? That was strange. Hadn't he always insisted he was Madara Uchiha? Not that anyone believed him. Was he just giving up now? Hey, beautiful, I just got a little excited seeing an old classmate. Asuma said casually, exhaling another puff of smoke. It's only natural to catch up with an old friend. I have nothing to say to you. Obito immediately ended the reunion, his cold gaze sweeping over the leaf shinobi. You think a few of you can stop me from taking the 9 tails? Even if we can't stop you, we'll fight to the death trying. Asuma said, his finger blades now visibly coated with chakra. And don't think the leaf only has a few shinobi like us. How is it? Shikamaru asked, turning back while Asuma spoke. Ino was crouched on the ground, examining Guy and Naruto. She replied. Naruto's body is fine, but his mind is a bit damaged. His body is healing itself, though. Guy-sensei's body is severely overworked and will need some time to recover. Shikamaru, Ino, Choji. Asuma ordered directly. You 3 guard Guy and Naruto. Leave the fighting to me and Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya, who had taken the chance to chew a few soldier pills, finally regained some stamina. He stepped forward, dramatically flipping his hair. With me here, you have nothing to worry about. Just stay put. Asuma and Jiraiya exchanged a glance, then charged forward to confront Obito. Asuma's finger blades were now extended with sharp chakra edges, and he closed the distance rapidly, using taijutsu to keep Obito on the defensive, forcing him to maintain his intangible state. Jiraiya, meanwhile, formed hand seals. Earth-style, swamp of the underworld. The ground beneath Konan and the unconscious Nagato turned into a swamp, causing their bodies to sink immediately. Nagato. Konan quickly bent down to pick up Nagato, spreading her wings to fly out of the swamp's range. Good, that separates the two of them. Jiraiya rushed forward, firing another toad oil bullet at Konan in the air. Konan, carrying Nagato, wasn't fast enough and was drenched in the oily substance. Her paper wings became uncontrollable, and she fell from the sky. Jiraiya used the oil to draw an arc on the ground, then changed his hand seals. Fire style, great fireball. Fire style? Konan's expression changed as she dodged the fireball with Nagato in her arms. The oil ignited instantly, and though Konan narrowly avoided the fireball, the flames followed the arc Jiraiya had drawn, creating a towering wall of fire that temporarily trapped her on the other side. Drenched in oil, Konan couldn't cross the firewall quickly. Jiraiya turned his attention to Asuma and Obito's battle. Despite knowing the intel, Asuma found it difficult to deal with Obito's space-time ninjutsu. At first, it seemed like he had the upper hand, but Obito quickly became more agile, switching between tangible and intangible states effortlessly. His unpredictable attacks kept Asuma on the defensive. If not for Shikamaru's timely use of his shadow techniques to provide long-range support, Asuma might have already been injured. Ninja art, Lion's main technique. Jiraiya's hair grew wildly again, twisting into several snake-like strands, their tips even opening like mouths. While controlling the hair snakes to assist Asuma and Shikamaru in attacking Obito, Jiraiya kept an eye on Konan's situation. Facing the relentless attacks and harassment from the 3, Obito's transitions between tangible and intangible states became less smooth. He had no time to form hand seals, and every time he materialized to attack Asuma, the other's attacks forced him back into intangibility. Despite this, Obito remained calm. His true goal was the opposite of what it appeared. His master had promised the 4th Hokage that Naruto wouldn't be taken away. However, he couldn't keep up this act for too long. Obito thought with frustration. To ensure his identity wasn't exposed, he would soon have to go all out. If he wasn't careful, he might actually end up taking Naruto. So, when Shibuya Burim and Takuma Hyuga arrived with a dozen leaf shinobi, Obito felt the same relief as Jiraiya and the others. Great, more reinforcements. Choji shouted excitedly. Guy-sensei. Seeing Guy lying on the ground, Leon Tenten rushed out from the reinforcements and hurried to his side. Don't worry, Guy-sensei isn't in critical condition. He's just overexerted himself. Ino reassured them. That's a relief. Guy-sensei will be fine. Lee said, tears streaming down his face. I'll take over the fight for him now. On the other side, the firewall died down, and Konan finally broke free from her isolation. With Nagato on her back, she scanned the group and frowned, shouting. Obito. Chapter 266, Obito maintained his intangible state and retreated to Konan's side. Asuma and Jiraiya exchanged a glance and also returned to the ranks of the leaf shinobi. Obito turned his head and asked. Has Nagato not woken up yet? Konan shook her head. This is troublesome. Obito said, glancing at the leaf shinobi. The best opportunity has passed. With Nagato unconscious and your combat ability greatly reduced, relying on me alone might be a bit difficult now. Konan gave him a cold look, implying that it was his fault for stalling earlier and not fighting with full effort. Don't look at me like that. Obito met her gaze with a cold stare. You, Nagato, and the 6 paths of pain all need my help to escape. You can explain it to Nagato yourself later. Konan averted her eyes. She knew that at this point, assigning blame was meaningless. If this man didn't give his all now, both she and Nagato might die at the hands of the Leaf Shinobi. Jiraiya-sama. The Leaf Shinobi now stood behind Jiraiya, waiting for his instructions. Hold your ground and engage from a distance. Don't get too entangled with them. For Jiraiya, protecting Naruto and preventing him from being taken was the top priority. Additionally, the battle in the village hadn't ceased, and he was inclined to force Konan and Obito to retreat. Moreover, Obito's abilities were extremely troublesome, and Jiraiya couldn't guarantee that his side wouldn't suffer casualties in a direct confrontation. Caution was the best approach. Obito formed hand seals and said to Konan, "I'll make one last attempt. If it doesn't work, we'll retreat." "Fine," Konan said, carrying Nagato on her back as she stepped back. Fire style, blazing storm dance. The spatial vortex in Obito's eyes guided the flames he spewed from his mouth, creating a massive swirling inferno that swept toward the Leaf Shinobi. A fire style of this magnitude, Jiraiya said with a serious expression. Prepare water style and earth style. Yes. The Leaf Shinobi began forming hand seals in unison. Water style, water wall. Earth style, earth wall. A towering wave of water surged forward, followed by thick earthen walls rising from the ground. The flaming vortex collided with the water, creating a cloud of white steam that extinguished most of the flames. The remaining fire and spatial distortions were barely blocked by the earthen walls. Leaf Great Whirlwind. Lee's voice suddenly rang out. Everyone turned to see Obito appearing next to Naruto, reaching down to grab him. Protect Naruto. Shikamaru crouched and formed hand seals. Shadow sewing technique. Taijutsu, kunai, shuriken, insects, shadow tendrils. Everyone near Naruto unleashed their attacks, but they all passed through Obito's intangible body. Humphrey. Obito let out a hoarse laugh and suddenly formed another hand seal. Wood style, wooden spikes. Sharp wooden thorns burst from the ground, rapidly branching and growing, piercing through several Leaf Shinobi in an instant before spreading further. Get out of the way. Choji spread his arms and rolled on the ground with Ino and Shikamaru, dodging the blood-stained thorns that chased after them. Fang over fang. Asuma appeared in a flash, his chakra blade slashing through the thorns, reducing them to splinters. We're saved. Choji stopped rolling, looking at Asuma's back with relief. Ha! Lee swung his nunchaku, standing in front of Tenten. Naruto. Shikamaru didn't have time to stand up and turned his head to look. At Naruto's location, a massive chakrasphere was spinning rapidly, blocking all the thorns. That's the Hyuga's rotation. Shikamaru couldn't help but sigh in relief, lying flat on the ground. That must be Hyuga Takuma. I didn't expect him to master the Hyuga clan's secret technique so quickly. He caught his breath and was pulled up by Choji, turning his gaze back to Naruto. In the center of the crowd, Obito stopped forming hand seals, passing through Takuma's rotation and charging straight toward Naruto. Takuma quickly stopped spinning and thrust out a palm. Obito dodged and reached for Naruto again. Secret technique, insect wall. Shibuya Barame's insects burst from the ground, also spinning rapidly around Naruto. At the same time, Jiraiya and Asuma once again blocked Obito's path. Really, what a pain. Obito glanced at them and retreated. Tend to the wounded. Jiraiya didn't pursue, instead directing everyone to treat the shinobi who had been pierced by the thorns. Although some had been fatally wounded, others had avoided critical injuries and needed immediate treatment. He then walked forward, keeping a close eye on Obito and Konan. Let's go. Seeing Obito's failed attempt, Konan didn't say anything more. She carried Nagato on her back and ran toward the location where she had stored the 6 paths of pain. Obito gave the Leaf Shinobi one last glance, chuckled, and then turned to leave. Jiraiya-sama? Asuma turned to Jiraiya. No need to pursue. Jiraiya raised his hand. Our comrades need treatment. Let's return to the village and support Tsunade. At that moment, the explosions in the village suddenly ceased, and a giant clay bird flew overhead. Everyone looked up as the bird soared past them. Is it over? The enemy has retreated. Did we win? Thank goodness. The crowd erupted in cheers. What's going on? Unlike the others' excitement, Jiraiya frowned deeply. Jiraiya-sama? Asuma also asked in a serious tone. Yeah, you feel it too, don't you? Jiraiya's expression was grave. Deidara and Sasori are powerful, but for them to retreat unscathed after facing Tsunade, Kakashi, Yamato, and the other Leaf reinforcements. That's highly unusual. He grew anxious, quickly walking back to Naruto and slinging him over his shoulder. Everyone. He raised his voice, silencing the crowd. The battle in the village has also ended. Please take the wounded and fallen comrades to the hospital. Asuma, come with me to report to the Hokage. Yes. The crowd responded, watching as Jiraiya carried Naruto and left with Asuma. Shikamaru, what are you thinking about? Choji sat on the ground, looking at Shikamaru, who was deep in thought. Something feels off. Shikamaru said, resting his chin on his hand. But even if something big happens, it's not our place to interfere. I don't get what you're saying. Choji pulled out a bag of chips from his pouch and started munching. Shikamaru. Choji. Ino's voice called from a distance. Honestly, you two, come and help. Coming. Shikamaru and Choji reluctantly stood up and began carrying the wounded that Ino had stabilized onto stretchers. Meanwhile, Guy, who had been unconscious, suddenly sat up and shouted. I won't let you harm my comrades. Guy-sensei. You're awake. Wah. Lee immediately threw himself at Guy. Tenten quickly patted Lee's back. Lee. Be gentle. You idiot. Guy-sensei passed out again. Chapter 267, Then It's Settled, Orochimaru-senpai. Kaido and Orochimaru stood atop the Hokage rock, facing each other. Hee. I'll make sure to fulfill my end. Don't forget what you promised me, Kaido-kun. Orochimaru's body slowly softened, merging into the soil beneath his feet. Of course, I remember everything I've said. Don't worry, Orochimaru-senpai. Kaido's body became as thin as paper, gradually shrinking. Then, I look forward to our next meeting, Kaido-kun. Orochimaru completely turned into a pile of mud, blending into the earth. Goodbye. Kaido then disappeared, leaving only a paper figure floating away in the wind. Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. A group of Hidden Leaf Village ninjas stood on the rooftop, discussing. What happened, Kakashi? Jiraiya looked at the dejected Kakashi. I'm deeply sorry, Jiraiya-sama. Kakashi lowered his head. Explain clearly. Jiraiya's voice was hoarse. Tsunade, Jiraiya-sama, it was our incompetence. Yamato stepped forward, and all the ninjas who had participated in the battle lowered their heads. Tell me clearly. Jiraiya's face was stern, his ore ready to burst. At that time, Yamato began to recount the events. When reinforcements arrived, Kakashi and Yamato decided to end the battle quickly, hoping to rush outside the village to support Jiraiya, Minato, and Naruto. They left Deidara to other ninjas skilled in lightning style. The two of them joined forces with Tsunade to surround Sasori of the Red Sand. It must be said that Tsunade, a medical genius with monstrous strength, was the natural nemesis of puppet masters. Her medical ninjutsu countered poison, and her strength could smash puppets with a single punch. Even Sasori, standing at the pinnacle of puppet masters, found it difficult to face Tsunade head-on. After Kakashi and Yamato joined the battle, the 100 puppets controlled by Sasori were rapidly reduced. Despite Sasori's various tricks, spitting water and fire, the trio managed to counter them all. Then, 100 puppets' performance turned into Sasori's solo act. At that moment, they thought victory was assured. Sasori took out several more puppets, but Tsunade smashed them all. Finally, Sasori revealed a puppet wearing a Hidden Leaf Village forehead protector. That is. Tsunade's face turned icy as she stared at the new puppet. This is Terai. The black-cloaked puppet's mouth clicked rapidly. For revenge, he willingly became part of my collection. A root ninja. Tsunade's expression was complicated. Correct. According to him, it was for Denzo's revenge. Coincidentally. Sasori glanced at Kakashi. I also have a grudge against Hidden Leaf Village, so I kindly allowed him to participate in this revenge-themed puppet show. You, who toy with life, are no longer human. Tsunade angrily rebuked. Sasori's actions constantly challenged Tsunade's limits as a medical ninja. Sasori was indifferent to Tsunade's accusation. Being human isn't that important to me. I am the pinnacle of my own art. Those who have no respect for life don't deserve to live, Sasori. I will destroy you here. Tsunade raised her fist and charged, with Kakashi and Yamato providing support. Come, Hokage of Hidden Leaf Village, son of the White Fang. This splendid revenge play is about to reach its climax. Sasori took out a dozen more puppets, mixing them with Terai, and surrounded Tsunade. Boom. Boom. Tsunade fearlessly smashed puppets with her fists, dodging attacks when possible and tanking them when necessary, charging straight towards Sasori's main body. Well, it seems we won't have much to do at this rate. Kakashi said lightly. Yeah, let's recover some chakra and then go support Jiraiya-sama and the others. Yamato agreed. Everything happened so suddenly. Tsunade broke through the puppet defenses and reached Sasori's main body, throwing a punch. Her fist pierced through his chest, but it felt like hitting nothing. The wind from her punch kicked up dust behind him. Then, the Sasori before her transformed into Terai's appearance. "Got you, Hokage." Sasori's voice came from another direction. "What?" Tsunade immediately tried to pull her arm back but couldn't. The lower half of Terai's puppet chest was hollow, and Tsunade's punch had gone through the hole, only to be caught by a mechanism inside. "Even if you've caught me." Unable to free her arm, Tsunade lifted it and slammed Terai's puppet body into the ground. Kakashi and Yamato rushed forward. "It's too late." Sasori laughed, as if victory was assured. Reverse 4 symbol sealing. Terai suddenly spoke, black symbols appearing on his skin, and an unknown black substance sprayed from his body. "What?" "The reverse 4 symbol sealing." Tsunade was shocked. "You're not dead yet. I couldn't use this mutual destruction sealing technique if I were dead." Terai's voice came from within the puppet. "Thanks to Sasori's help, my wish has been fulfilled. Die, 5th Hokage." The black substance began to gush out. "Get out of here!" Tsunade shouted to Kakashi and Yamato, slamming Terai's puppet body to the ground before retreating. "Tsunade-sama! Hokage-sama!" Kakashi threw out a chain, and Yamato's arm turned into wood, both trying to pull Tsunade to safety. A black sphere appeared with Terai at its center, rapidly expanding. Kakashi and Yamato were pulled back by other ninjas using chains, but Tsunade disappeared into the massive black sphere. When the black sphere vanished, only a smooth crater remained, with Terai's shattered puppet body lying at the bottom. "Hokage-sama! How could this?" "Tsunade-sama! Hokage-sama!" All the Hidden Leaf Village ninjas were stunned, unable to believe their eyes. That was their Hokage, one of the legendary Sannin, the granddaughter of the first Hokage Hashirama Senshu, revered by the entire ninja world as Princess Tsunade. How could she just disappear like that? They couldn't accept this reality. This wasn't like the third Hokage, who died in battle against a powerful enemy. Everyone knew Tsunade had been dominating the fight. For a village's Kage to die from a traitorous ninja's sneak attack was simply unimaginable. "You bastard! Bastard!" Everyone glared at Sasori with hatred. "Kill him! Avenge the Hokage! Kill that bastard!" In their rage, the crowd surged forward. Chapter 268, Kaido Uchiha. Kakashi stood up. He might be at Sensei's house. "Sensei." Suddenly, he realized something and asked with difficulty. "Jiraiya-sama, what about Sensei?" "Minato-sensei?" Jiraiya shook his head, as if completely drained of energy, and slumped to the ground. "When Guy and I arrived, all we saw was Naruto in the rampage." "How is that possible?" Kakashi couldn't believe it. That was Minato-sensei. For Minato, who possessed the Flying Thunder God technique, to disappear was even more unbelievable than Tsunade-sama's sacrifice. "Go find Kaido," Jiraiya said weakly once more. The disappearance of Tsunade and Minato had completely shattered his spirit. Although Minato had already passed away long ago. But the reappearance of Sensei was no different from when he was alive, and I had forgotten the fact that Minato-sensei was already a deceased person. Kakashi snapped back to reality and said urgently. "I'll go find Kaido. He has a connection with Minato-sensei, so he must know something. I'll bring him directly to the site where Tsunade-sama was sealed." He turned and leaped away, heading toward Minato's house at top speed. A small paper figure floated in the wind, drifting through the open door of Minato's house. Kaido's paper clone had just sat down on the sofa when Kakashi burst in. "Kaido." He grabbed Kaido's wrist and pulled him up. "Come with me." Without waiting for a response, he dragged him toward the door. "Wait, what's going on?" Kaido followed his pull, pretending not to know. "Two things." Kakashi didn't stop walking. "To save time, let's talk while we move." Alright. Kaido broke free from his grip. "Just tell me, and I'll keep up with you." "Fine." Kakashi immediately picked up the pace. "First, about Minato-sensei's disappearance. You should know about it, right? After all, you two have some kind of connection." Kaido followed behind Kakashi and said. "I can only vaguely sense that he was accidentally sealed by Nagato's ability." "Sealed?" Kakashi raised his voice, immediately sensitive to the word seal. "Don't worry too much about him. I can sense that the contract is still intact, which means his soul hasn't disappeared. Besides, I'll find a way to rescue him." Kaido reassured him. "You can rescue Minato-sensei from the seal?" Kakashi suddenly stopped and turned around excitedly. Kaido had to stop abruptly to avoid crashing into him. "Kaido, can you really save Minato-sensei from the seal?" Kakashi grabbed Kaido's wrist again. "Because of Minato's unique state, I should be able to rescue him with some confidence." Kaido broke free from his grip once more and gave a firm answer. I'm sorry. Kakashi withdrew his hand. I mean, the Hokage-sama. Tsunade-sama was also sealed. Jiraiya-sama wants you to try and save her. What? Kaido's face showed genuine surprise. Wasn't the Hokage stationed at Hidden Leaf Village Hospital? And if she was sealed, what kind of seal was it? Let's go. Kakashi turned and started running again. Tsunade-sama went to the battlefield earlier and was ambushed by a rogue ninja from Root using the reverse 4 symbol sealing. The reverse 4 symbols sealing? Kaido's expression became hesitant. Didn't you just say you could save Minato-sensei? Kakashi looked back. Kaito sighed and explained. You need to understand that Minato has been dead for a long time. That's the biggest difference between him and the Hokage. Besides, Minato is my tool, but Tsunade isn't. I see. Kakashi seemed to understand. I hope you'll do your best. Whatever conditions you have, Jiraiya-sama will definitely agree. Kaido didn't respond. The two soon arrived at the crater left by the reverse 4 symbol sealing. As soon as Jiraiya saw Kaido, he grabbed his wrist and dragged him to the bottom of the crater. Why do these people keep grabbing me? Kaido broke free again, annoyed but understanding their urgency, so he didn't say anything accusatory. He crouched down and carefully examined Terai's corpse lying at the bottom of the crater. So, can you break the seal? Jiraiya asked eagerly from the side. Jiraiya-sama, I've only been looking for 3 seconds. Kaido felt helpless again. Oh. Keep looking. I won't disturb you. Jiraiya quickly stepped back, then turned and assured him. As long as you can save Tsunade, name your conditions. In the fight against the Otsutsuki, I want Hidden Leaf Village's full support. Kaido stated directly. Full support? Jiraiya thought for a few seconds. Full support wasn't just lip service. It meant dedicating all efforts to the cause and standing firmly behind Kaido at the forefront of the future united front. I can only say I'll do my best. Jiraiya gave the most assurance he could. After all, you know that not all Hidden Leaf Village ninjas will listen to me and Tsunade. Deal. Then I'll do my best to break the seal. Kaito was satisfied and began placing his hand on Terai's chest, using his spiritual energy to thoroughly scan the puppet's corpse. I need all the information on the reverse 4 symbol sealing. He stood up. Also, prepare a room for me at Hidden Leaf Village Hospital and move this body there. Alright, alright. Jiraiya agreed repeatedly, waving to a masked Anbu ninja nearby. Do as Kaito says. Yes. The Anbu ninja began directing his comrades to move the body. Kaido turned to leave, and Jiraiya quickly caught up. Kaido, tell me, how is Tsunade? Will she be okay after the seal is broken? Do you have any confidence? Kaito sighed. Sorry, Jiraiya, I can only draw conclusions after reviewing all the information on the reverse 4 symbol sealing. As for Tsunade-sama's life or death, that can only be determined after breaking the seal. I understand. The information will be sent over soon. Let's go to Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. Jiraiya unconsciously grabbed Kaido's wrist and started running. Ah, whatever. Kaido looked utterly resigned, his body becoming as thin and light as paper, being dragged by Jiraiya like a fluttering flag all the way to Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. The Anbu's efficiency was high. By the time they arrived at the hospital, the room was ready, the body was in place, and the sealing technique information had been delivered. Kaido broke free from Jiraiya's grip once more, took the information from the Anbu ninja, and pushed open the door to the room. Inside, he saw Sakura and Shizune standing in front of the examination table where Terai's body lay, their faces filled with grief as they turned to look at him. Kaido-sama. Upon seeing Kaido, the two immediately rushed over, each grabbing one of his hands tightly, as if clutching a lifeline. Kaido-sama. Please save Tsunade-sama. Please. Both of them were crying, especially Sakura, whose snot was about to drip onto Kaido's sleeve. Alright, I'll do my best. Kaido quickly shrank his hands to break free, then returned them to normal and pushed both girls, along with Jiraiya, out the door. All of you, calm down. In any case, do not disturb me. He spoke sternly, then slammed the door shut with a bang. Chapter 269, You. Jiraiya stared at the tightly closed door, wanting to knock directly, but after hesitating for a moment, he reluctantly lowered his hand and sat down on the floor in front of the door. Sakura and Shizune leaned against each other, also sitting down on the ground as if drained of energy. Soon, Kakashi, Yamato, Asuma, Kurenai, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Kiba, Shino, Hinata, Ten, Lee, and many other ninjas arrived, gathering uneasily in the hallway. No one spoke. Everyone silently lowered their heads, lost in their own thoughts. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of footsteps echoed, but the people waiting outside the door remained oblivious. Jiraiya-sama. Shikaku's voice broke the silent atmosphere. He walked through the crowd and approached Jiraiya. What is it, Shikaku? Jiraiya slowly raised his head, his voice hoarse. Jiraiya-sama, although this may seem unreasonable. Shikaku sighed and continued. But now that the battle is over, there are many matters that Hidden Leaf Village needs to handle. We need you to step up and act as the interim Hokage. No, I won't do it. Jiraiya lowered his head again and refused outright. That's Tsunoda's responsibility. She can handle it herself when she returns. Jiraiya-sama. Shikaku didn't give up. Today's battle has cost us many comrades. On top of that, the village's facilities have been severely damaged. We urgently need someone with authority to step up and handle these matters, to give our fellow Hidden Leaf Village citizens confidence. With the Hokage's current situation unclear, you are the only suitable candidate. I refuse. Jiraiya cut Shikaku off. This kind of thing. You, Kakashi, Asuma, anyone can do it. Me? Shikaku shook his head. I don't have that kind of authority, Jiraiya-sama. Kakashi and Asuma immediately retreated into the crowd. Jiraiya-sama. Shikaku tried to persuade him again. Enough. Jiraiya punched the ground. Anyone can do it. I'm staying here to wait for Tsunoda to return. Shikaku opened his mouth but ultimately relented. Then, let's call a Jonin meeting and have everyone discuss how to solve the problems. What do you think? He proposed a new plan. Whatever. I believe you can handle it. Jiraiya waved his hand impatiently. Shikaku sighed silently, then turned and scanned the crowd. Seeing the people he looked at shrinking back, he felt a headache coming on. Why do I have to deal with such troublesome things again? Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself and spoke. Everyone, to be honest, I'm also grieving and want to wait here without a care for anything else. His gaze swept over the crowd, who were all hanging their heads. But as Hidden Leaf Village ninjas, we must shoulder our responsibilities. Especially now, when the Hokage is unable to fulfill her duties, it's time for all of us to step up. He walked straight through the crowd toward the staircase. Please contribute your strength to the village. As the Jonin commander, I declare that a Jonin meeting will be held. Please follow me. The crowd remained silent for a long time, with only Shikaku's footsteps echoing in their ears. Let's go. Kakashi was the first to step forward and follow Shikaku. Let's go. Asuma and Kurenai followed closely behind. Then Yamato. The other Jonin also stepped forward one by one, following in succession. Shizune? Sakura looked at Shizune in surprise as she stood up. I'm also a Jonin of Hidden Leaf Village. Shizune stood with her back to Sakura, her body still trembling. Until Tsunoda-sama returns, I will take care of the Hokage's office and fulfill my duties as the Hokage's assistant. Stay strong, Shizune. Sakura also trembled as she stood up. Tsunoda-sama will definitely return. Please wait here for Tsunoda-sama's return on my behalf, Sakura. Shizune straightened her back and strode forward to follow the other Jonin. I will. Sakura wiped away her tears, her expression firm as she also stood straight by the door of the room. Tsunoda, do you see this? Jiraiya still hung his head, but a relieved smile appeared on his face. Everyone is working hard for the village, and some firmly believe that you will return. So, please. You must come back, Tsunoda. In contrast to the solemn and tragic atmosphere in the hallway, Kaido's paper clone inside the room was leisurely sitting on a chair, casually flipping through the information on the reverse 4 symbol ceiling. He had already witnessed Tsunoda's sealing. To be honest, the sealing techniques of ninjas and those of Onmyoji share some similarities. After obtaining the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques from Denzo, he had studied them carefully and gained many insights. Human wisdom is truly boundless. Although Kaido had studied them, and Hidden Leaf Village knew he had studied them, many things could only be done, not spoken of, and certainly not made explicit. So he demanded the information with confidence, and Jiraiya handed it over without hesitation. This so-called reverse 4 symbol sealing is a sealing technique designed for mutual destruction, perfectly suited for extremists like Denzo and the Root organization. Unfortunately, Denzo died before he could use this terrifying technique. The reverse 4 symbol sealing uses the cycle of the 4 symbols to seal the enemy, while the 4 black symbols formation extends and modifies this principle. Simply put, it reverses the cycle of the 4 symbol seal from inward to outward, then enhances its power by consuming the user's entire life force. Kaido put down the information and stood up, stretching. Fortunately, the windows in this room were covered with thick curtains, and Kaido had casually set up a barrier to prevent Byakugan from spying. Otherwise, if the Hidden Leaf Village ninjas discovered that the person they were pinning their hopes on to save the Hokage was blatantly slacking off, they would surely rise up in anger. Kaito naturally had to stall for time, not wanting to give the Hidden Leaf Village ninjas the impression that he could easily break the seal. After all, if he made it look too easy, they wouldn't be willing to pay a high price. As for Tsunoda's life or death, that would depend on fate. In Kaido's eyes, the boundary between life and death is blurred. Even if Tsunoda died, she could become an existence like Minato. And she'd get a free Sage Mode power-up. He would also gain an excellent tool. Wouldn't that be a win-win for everyone? In another room at Hidden Leaf Village Hospital, Naruto, lying on the hospital bed, opened his eyes. He glanced around at his surroundings and, contrary to his usual behavior, didn't make a fuss. Instead, he stared at the ceiling and silently began to cry. The image of Minato's soul being devoured by that strange man kept replaying in his mind. At this moment, he didn't want to care about anything else. "Dad." Naruto whispered softly. The scenes in his mind shifted, and memories of his daily life and training with his father began to surface. These past 2 years had been the happiest time of Naruto's life since birth. For the first time, he truly understood what happiness felt like. But this brief happiness seemed to be coming to an end. He had become an orphan again. "It hurts." He clutched his chest and murmured. "It really hurts." He remembered telling Sasuke before that just imagining the pain of losing a loved one was unbearable. But he never expected that experiencing it firsthand would be 100, 1,000 times more painful. At the same time, an unbearable hatred was growing in his heart, gnawing at his soul, even more unbearable than the pain. "I finally understand, Sasuke." Naruto turned to his side, curling up into a ball, yet still feeling inexplicably cold. Maybe I should apologize to Sasuke again, more sincerely. He suddenly thought. Because now, in his heart, things like becoming Hokage, the village, peace. Compared to his father's existence, they were all worthless. Indeed, losing something after having it is much more painful than never having had it at all. Chapter 270, Mount Hama, Uchiha Residence. Inside a dimly lit secret chamber, the soft glow of candlelight faintly illuminated the space. Kaito sat cross-legged in a corner of the room with his eyes closed, while Madara and Izuna sat quietly nearby, watching him. "Everything is ready." Kaito suddenly opened his eyes and smiled. "Then let's go." Madara stood up immediately. "Are we leaving now?" Izuna also rose to his feet. "We're leaving now." Kaito remained seated, his fingers twisting into an intricate hand seal that would be difficult for an ordinary person to perform. Soon, his body began to emit a faint spiritual light, growing brighter and brighter. A translucent shadow emerged from the top of his head. "So this is what it feels like to leave the body." The shadow spoke. "This is actually my first time trying this. Isn't his kind of behavior dangerous?" Izuna looked at Kaito's disembodied soul. "There is some risk, but this time I've inscribed protective seals on my body. If my soul is damaged, it will automatically return to my body across space." Kaito's soul replied. Madara nodded upon hearing this. "Good, that ensures there's no room for error. Now it's your turn." Kaito's soul began forming hand seals. Madara and Izuna's bodies also lit up with a blue spiritual light, and their souls immediately flew out of their bodies, leaving behind 2 wooden puppets made from the branches of the divine tree. The 3 souls moved, each standing within a circle at one corner of an equilateral triangle formation drawn on the ground. Kaito's soul formed another hand seal, and the formation on the ground slowly began to glow. The circle beneath Madara's feet was inscribed with the character for heaven. Izuna's with earth. And Kaito's with man. "Next, we need to connect our powers." Kaito began chanting an incantation. "The way of heaven is defined by yin and yang, the way of earth is defined by softness and hardness, the way of man is defined by benevolence and righteousness." Combining the 3 powers into one, the Trinity formation. 2 translucent chains flew out from Kaito's soul, connecting to Madara and Izuna's souls. Then, chains also flew out from Madara and Izuna's souls, colliding and merging in midair along the line connecting the 2 in the triangular formation. At this point, the 3 souls were connected to each other through the chains. "Let's move on to the next step," Kaito said. Madara and Izuna nodded, and the 3 of them simultaneously formed hand seals. Susanoo. A small Susanoo, only the height of 3 people, appeared at the center of the formation. The Susanoo, created by the combined efforts of the 3, had a white base with black armor and black wings on its back. Unlike the samurai-like Susanoo with a Tengu mask, this one resembled the legendary Great Tengu itself, with every feather on its wings vividly detailed and lifelike. Merge. Kaito changed his hand seal, and the 3 souls shrank, transforming into 3 points of spiritual fire that entered the gem embedded in the Susanoo's forehead. Inside the illusory space, the 3 sat cross-legged, with the triangular formation inscribed with heaven, earth, and man still beneath them. In front of Kaito's position marked man. The Susanoo's field of vision was projected. Now, leave the rest to me. Kaido closed his eyes. Inside the secret chamber, the Susanoo opened its blood-red eyes, marked with 3 tomoe. It blinked, then quickly shrank to the height of an ordinary person. It walked over to a wooden shelf in the chamber and picked up a small glass jar sealed with a talisman. The Susanoo carried the jar to the other side of the chamber, pushed open a door, and entered another room devoid of any light. It reached out and removed the talisman from the mouth of the jar. A faint spark of spiritual fire slowly lit up inside the jar, illuminating the name written on the label attached to it. Minato no Mikeji. The Susanoo poured the weak spark of spiritual fire onto the ground, placed the jar aside, and began forming hand seals. The faint light from the spiritual fire suddenly grew brighter, gradually illuminating the complex formation on the ground. Blue light traveled along the lines and runes inscribed in the formation, eventually lighting up the entire array. The ground trembled slightly as a small spatial fluctuation appeared at the center of the formation. The fluctuation gradually expanded, eventually forming a vortex-like spatial portal. Found it. The Susanoo spoke, its voice that of Kaido. He manipulated the Susanoo to take a step forward, crossing into the spatial portal. As the Susanoo's body sank and disappeared into the portal, the vortex-like spatial passage gradually shrank until it vanished. Then, the spiritual fire taken from the jar completely extinguished, the formation on the ground dimmed, and the chamber was once again plunged into darkness. Inside a gray, misty space, all that could be seen was rolling gray fog. A vortex-like spatial portal suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and the Susanoo fell out of it, flapping its wings to stabilize itself. Looking around, Kaito noticed that this place had no sky above or ground below, and the endless gray fog limited visibility. Fortunately, I can vaguely sense the contract with Minato now that we're here. Kaito manipulated the Susanoo to fly in the direction of the sensed connection. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps a day, perhaps a week, the surroundings showed no change, and Kaito had no choice but to keep the Susanoo flying non-stop. Thankfully, with the help of those two, I wouldn't have been able to last long on my own. Inside the illusory space, Kaito's voice echoed. Madara and Izuna, who had been watching the external environment through the projected vision, also felt mentally exhausted and didn't feel like saying much. Don't overthink it. Just focus on reaching the destination in one go. Madara said before closing his eyes. Didn't you say you could directly pinpoint the location? Why is the deviation so large? Izuna, who had kept his eyes closed the entire time, grumbled. There's no helping it. Crossing different spaces inevitably leads to some deviation. Kaito sighed and continued to manipulate the Susanoo's flight. After another unknown period, perhaps a week, perhaps a month, Kaito finally clearly sensed the contract with Minato. I feel like we're almost there. His voice was filled with excitement. Hey. Finally almost there? Madara and Izuna opened their eyes and looked at the external scene through the projected vision. The gray fog continued to roll endlessly, boundless and vast. Closer, closer. Kaito muttered eagerly. Finally, a faint outline appeared in the distance through the thick fog. As the distance closed, the outline gradually became clearer, revealing a majestic and ancient hall. The hall stood on a floating piece of land, surrounded by endless fog, like a small isolated island in an infinite sea. The hall was predominantly black and gray, with eerily upturned eaves. The outer walls were carved with countless stone statues of ferocious demons, and the massive black doors were tightly shut. As they drew closer, Kaito realized that the scale of this hall was far from normal. So big. The Susanoo stood at the entrance of the hall, looking up like a mouse standing at the doorway of a human house. In that case, inside the illusory space, the formation erupted with a bright light, and the Susanoo's body began to grow, quickly returning to its normal height of over 100 meters. Finally, the scale matches. Looking up, Kaito could now clearly see the plaque above the hall's entrance, inscribed with the 3 characters, Yama's Hall. The Susanoo pushed open the hall's doors. Chapter 271, the heavy doors creaked as they were pushed open, releasing a thick cloud of dust and the musty smell of decay that had been sealed away for thousands of years. Ugh! Kaito sighed in relief. Well, at least the Susanoo is essentially a technique made of energy and doesn't need to breathe. After a long while, the dust settled, and the Susanoo finally stepped into the grand hall. The vast interior was shrouded in deep darkness. Even through the Susanoo's vision, Kaito could only barely make out a small patch of the ground near the entrance. Madara-senpai. Understood. The character for heaven beneath Madara lit up, and the Susanoo raised its left hand, a flame igniting in its palm. Kaito continued to manipulate the Susanoo, holding the flame in its left hand as it moved forward. Unfortunately, the light from the flame only illuminated a small area around the Susanoo. The light didn't gradually fade as it would in the outside world. Instead, it formed a sharply defined sphere, with the orange glow inside clearly separated from the thick darkness outside. The Susanoo walked in a straight line from the center of the hall's entrance. After some time, there was still nothing ahead. After walking for about half an hour, the light from the flame finally began to spread normally, and Kaido faintly saw some menacing figures ahead. "Be careful," Izuna warned. Madara made a judgment. "They're probably statues. Or they could be traps." Izuna hesitated. Madara didn't say more. "Don't worry." Kaito slowed the Susanoo's pace. "I'll be ready for a fight." As the Susanoo approached, the three of them finally saw the true nature of the figures. They were a line of demon statues, arranged in a straight row, their authenticity unclear. The statue at the front had twisted limbs and an expression of agony. Surprisingly, its skull had been opened, and its head had been turned into a lamp. The Susanoo extended its left hand, and the flame ignited the wick. Once the wick was lit, the demon statue suddenly moved to the left side of the hall, illuminating a large area. "Continue," Madara said. "Right," Kaido responded, and the Susanoo moved forward, lighting each demon lamp in turn. These lamps had their limbs twisted into bizarre shapes. Some had wicks on their heads, others in their mouths, chests, abdomens, hands, or feet. As each lamp was lit, it moved to the base of the massive stone pillars on either side of the hall. Step by step, more of the hall was illuminated. Finally, when the last lamp was in place, a wide staircase appeared before the Susanoo. Looking up, the top of the staircase was still dim, but a figure roughly the same size as the Susanoo could be seen seated there. That should be King Inma's body. The Susanoo continued to climb the stairs, holding the flame in its hand. As it approached the throne, the Susanoo brought its hands together, splitting the flame into two and tossing them to the left and right of the throne. Boom. Boom. The two flames landed on bone-shaped lampstands on either side of the throne, fully illuminating the area above the stairs. King Inma's body sat on a throne pieced together from bones. He wore a gray robe with a red collar, and his crown bore the character for king on the front, with two long white feathers on the sides. The lower half of his face was hidden behind a cloth curtain, and his open eyes bore the ring-like patterns of the Rinnegan. "Madara-senpai, the next step is up to you." The Susanoo closed its eyes and remained motionless. Inside the illusory space within the gem on the Susanoo's forehead, Kaido opened his eyes. "Right." Madara then closed his eyes. The triangular formation beneath the three of them began to rotate, and Madara's position moved to the front. The Susanoo opened its eyes again, now bearing the same color and patterns as King Inma's eyes. Taking a step forward, the Susanoo stared directly into King Inma's eyes, and a powerful ocular force began to invade his body. "Once Madara-senpai successfully takes control of King Inma's body, I'll be able to obtain the full power of Inma," Kaido said excitedly, watching the scene through the projected vision. "With the power of Inma in hand, our Uchiha clan will be invincible." At this moment, Izuna was also filled with anticipation. "Done." Madara's voice echoed in the illusory space. Kaido was surprised. "That fast? Humphrey, how long did you think it would take?" "Don't forget that Nagato's eyes originally belonged to me," Madara said dismissively. "I see." Kaito made a request. "Next, please completely erase the contract you seized, allowing him to return to freedom." "Understood." Madara agreed, and the Rinnegan patterns in King Inma's eyes gradually faded, turning into pure black. "Now it's my turn," Kaito said with excitement. The formation rotated again, and Kaido moved to the front before closing his eyes. The Susanoo's Rinnegan transformed back into the 3 Tomoe Sharingan, then into the 5-pointed star pattern of the Mengekyo Sharingan. "This is the first time I've tried to communicate with the Ramyaku in this state." Kaito manipulated the Susanoo to form hand seals. His voice echoed. "Ramyaku hidden deep within the earth, the pulse of the planet, the source of life, appear now. By this summoning, I beseech your protection. As I command, so shall it be." However, after the incantation, nothing happened. "What's going on?" Kaito was stunned. "I can't connect to Ramyaku. Right now, you exist solely as a soul," Madara reminded him. "It's not that," Kaito said firmly. "Onmyoji have always valued the soul over the body. My connection to Ramyaku is through my soul and consciousness. Could it be interference from me and my brother?" Izuna suggested another possibility. "No, my connection to Ramyaku wouldn't be affected by your presence." Kaido had already figured it out. "It seems to be a problem with this alternate space." "Of course you can't summon Ramyaku of the planet from an alternate space," Izuna said irritably. "I can sense that this alternate space is connected to the planet," Kaido countered. "The most likely reason is that this alternate space is a fragment of the land of the dead, filled with a large amount of death energy. It's the death energy that's blocking the life energy of Ramyaku." "Then, have you thought about how you'll make a decision in the future?" Madara brought up the issue of what was to come. "Indeed, Life energy and death energy were fundamentally opposing forces. If he wanted to simultaneously control the power of Ramyaku and the power of Enma, he might end up losing more than he gained. However, he had never intended to incorporate the power of Enma into himself, so he would proceed with the original plan. Don't worry, I have a solution. Madara didn't say more. The key isn't figuring out life energy or death energy, but how you're going to deal with King Enma's body right now. Izuna brought the topic back. Don't worry, I always prepare backup plans for important matters. Kaito smiled. He manipulated the Susanoo to crouch down, its fingertip glowing with blue spiritual light as it quickly drew a circular formation on the ground. Come forth, box of ultimate bliss. Then, the Susanoo slammed its palm on the edge of the formation. Chapter 272, the magic circle lit up, and with a bang. White smoke enveloped the box of ultimate bliss, which appeared at the center of the circle. Summoning jutsu? Izuna asked. Indeed, it's a summoning jutsu. Kaito explained. The summoning jutsu passed down by Onmyoji doesn't require blood. It only needs a small sacrifice of soul energy to summon the target. He manipulated Susanoo to pick up the box of ultimate bliss. Of course, the target of the summoning must have a soul-bound contract with the caster. So this is your backup plan? It seems more convenient than the primary plan. Izuna said, his tone relaxed now that the problem was solved. Isn't it normal for a backup plan to be better than the primary one? Kaito replied, surprised. Otherwise, how could it be called a trump card? Susanoo placed the box of ultimate bliss in front of Enma. Sophistry. Izuna scoffed. It's troublesome that we can't use Ramyaku's power here. Kaito sighed. Indeed, not all backup plans can become trump cards. Izuna understood his meaning. Of course, since it's called a trump card, there naturally won't be too many of them. Kaito retorted habitually. What are you going to do? Izuna was more concerned about how to handle Enma. Of course, I'll use spiritual power directly. Kaito said. But what? Izuna was worried that this operation wouldn't yield the desired results. But I'll be exhausted. Kaito's voice was full of reluctance. I haven't used my full spiritual power in a long time. Honestly, the feeling of spiritual power depletion is not pleasant. Get to work. Izuna shouted, cutting off his complaints. Alright, this place is too cramped. Kaito manipulated Susanoo to flap its wings and fly up from the steps, landing in the spacious hall. This is much better. Now then. Susanoo knelt on one knee, its palms pressing against the ground. Kaito's voice still carried a hint of reluctance. Let's get to work. Blue spiritual light glowed beneath his palms, and luminous spiritual power surged from his hands, spreading out in two perfect arcs from left and right. Then, the spiritual power automatically drew more lines, patterns, symbols, and runes, rapidly spreading across the ground from beneath his palms. Soon, a massive circular magic circle took shape. Done. Susanoo stood up and flapped its wings, flying back up the steps. This is what you call exhausting? Izuna couldn't help but complains. And if you have such a convenient way to set up the array, why did you always use a brush to draw it on the ground before? Really, senior, you don't understand. Susanoo walked up to Enma, picked it up, and slung it over its shoulder, then began descending the steps one by one. This time, it's just out of necessity. Setting up the array this way consumes too much spiritual power. Before, if there was a way to save spiritual power, why wouldn't I use it? Izuna didn't bother arguing with him. From his elevated vantage point, he could now clearly see the array in the hall. Is this the sun and moon diagram? Correct. Susanoo quickly descended the steps and placed Enma's body upright in the circular pattern representing the sun within the array. The body is yang, the soul is yin, the sun is yang, the moon is yin. To merge the power of the body and soul, we need to borrow the power of the sun and moon. As he spoke, Susanoo took flight again, bringing the box of ultimate bliss down and placing it on the crescent moon pattern. Then, it crouched and removed the 4 demon masks from the box, tossing them aside. Now, preparations are complete. Susanoo clapped its hands and stepped out of the array. Are you ready? A strange, elderly voice suddenly emerged from the darkness at the front of the hall. Who's there? Kaito's heart tightened, and he instinctively guessed the identity of the newcomer. The elderly voice chuckled, and the sound of footsteps mixed with the clinking of metal against stone gradually approached. In the illusory space, Kaito spoke with grave seriousness, this is bad. It's likely the Sage of Six Paths. And of all times, he shows up now. Is he here to seize Enma's power? Izuna also grew tense. I won't let him succeed. Kaito gritted his teeth. As he spoke, Susanoo formed hand seals. Boom. On the other side, the box of ultimate bliss disappeared. At the same time, a black staff had already reached Susanoo's forehead. The Sage of Six Paths, clad in white robes, with horns on his head and holding a black staff, suddenly appeared in their field of vision. Compared to the 100-meter-tall Susanoo and Inmadeo, the Sage of Six Paths' figure was minuscule. However, Kaido's nerves were on edge, and he didn't dare let the staff touch Susanoo. He manipulated Susanoo to dodge backward while rapidly shrinking in size. In an instant, Susanoo shrank to the size of an ordinary person, putting distance between itself and the Sage of Six Paths. The Sage of Six Paths didn't pursue. Instead, he stopped and hovered in the air, sitting cross-legged. Susanoo also flapped its wings and hovered in the air on the other side. "You teleported the box of ultimate bliss away?" The Sage of Six Paths' voice was gentle, and his face bore a compassionate smile. "It seems you've made quite a few preparations, Kaido Uchiha." As expected of the legendary Sage of Six Paths. "Nothing escapes your notice." Kaido, now calm, replied. "May I ask why you've come here?" "Why ask when you already know?" The Sage of Six Paths exuded an aura of compassion, looking at Susanoo as if it were a misbehaving child. "Children, for the sake of the world's stability, Inma's power should return to the Pure Land, not remain in the hands of any individual." "That's not necessarily true." Kaido's voice came through. "I, too, wish to save the world." The Sage of Six Paths shook his head. "I won't force you. Think it over carefully." In the illusory space, Kaido's voice rang out. As expected, the Sage of Six Paths has been hiding in the Pure Land all along. It's highly likely that he's been trying to fully control the Pure Land all these years. So he will never give up Inma's power. Madara stated firmly. "Indeed." Kaido sneered. Before, he might not have had the means to fully purify Inma's dispersed power. But now, he's finally found the perfect opportunity. "What do we do?" Izuna asked anxiously. They were facing the ancestor of all shinobi, and the pressure was immense. "I was right to be wary of the Sage of Six Paths and his brother all along. No matter what, I won't let others reap the benefits of my hard work." Kaido rambled on. "Prepare for battle." Madara's voice remained steady. "Even if it's the legendary Sage of Six Paths, we can't retreat without a fight. I'll leave the next part to you, Senior Madara," Kaido said, handing over control to Madara. "I need some time to prepare." Kaido was well aware of his limitations. In his current state, without Ramyaku's power, fighting would put him at a disadvantage. Letting Madara take control was the best option for now. "Very well." Madara accepted readily. Chapter 273, the aura of Susanoo shifted, and its eyes transformed into the same Rinnegan as the Sage of Six Paths. "You are the child called Madara, aren't you?" The Sage of Six Paths looked over with a loving gaze. "You were once chosen by Indra. What a pity." "Indra? The progenitor of the Uchiha clan?" Madara didn't fully understand the sage's cryptic words. "Indra is my eldest son." The Sage of Six Paths sighed. "The chakra of my eldest son, Indra, and my second son, Azura, has been continuously reincarnating. Their conflict has never ceased." "Oh? During my lifetime, the only shinobi on par with me was Hashirama. So, he was the one chosen by Azura's chakra?" Madara replied without hesitation. The Sage of Six Paths did not deny it. In the illusory space, Kaido clicked his tongue. What I saw before was indeed correct. Sasuke and Naruto must be in the same situation now. I only noticed some connection between them, but I didn't expect the truth to be like this. Now that I think about it, no wonder both Madara and Hashirama, as well as Sasuke and Naruto, are bound by fate. Humphrey. Izuna's face darkened, and his fear of the Sage of Six Paths was completely thrown to the wind. Madara is Madara, not some reincarnation of someone else. That trash, Hashirama, wants to be my brother's sibling? Impossible. Madara looked directly at the Sage of Six Paths and spoke bluntly. Those are meaningless matters. I am Madara, not a symbol representing someone else. Do you think calling me a reincarnation can erase the life I, Madara Uchiha, have lived? Of course, no one will erase the life of Madara Uchiha. The Sage of Six Paths replied, still calm and composed. He glanced up at Inma. Have you made a decision about Inma? At this moment, Susanoo and a Sage of Six Paths were floating at the level of Inma's chest. Hearing the question, Madara also looked up and gave his answer. The power of Inma belongs to Kaido. The Sage of Six Paths shook his head. Do you know that the rules of the Pure Land are incomplete? Currently, the souls of shinobi cannot be directly reincarnated. The power of Inma should be used to fulfill its proper role in the Pure Land, to complete the incomplete reincarnation. We can achieve that too. Madara sneered. The Sage of Six Paths sighed helplessly and raised his staff. I will not take action myself. I will only find some helpers to stop you. Illusory Tomoe flew out from the staff, rapidly growing in size and embedding themselves into the iron lanterns of evil spirit that had been lit earlier on both sides of the hall. All the iron lanterns began to emit a white light. Crack. 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 The iron lanterns started to move. Their eyes rotated, their mouths split open, and their twisted limbs seemed to come to life in an instant. They even began to let out sad howls. The iron lanterns of evil spirit had transformed into iron demon lanterns. The nearest few iron demon lanterns had already surrounded them. What powerful yin-yang style! Madara controlled Susanoo to rapidly grow in size, punching away one of the iron demon lanterns. To instantly bestow life upon so many inanimate objects. More iron demon lanterns surrounded them, their twisted limbs flailing wildly, the burning wicks spitting out flames as they relentlessly attacked Susanoo. Although there are many of them, trash is still trash. Madara manipulated Susanoo to execute flawless taijutsu, moving through the encirclement as if it were an uninhabited land, weaving back and forth with no one able to stop him. But the iron demon lanterns were numerous, seemingly endless. Hurry, Senior Madara, the Sage of Six Paths has entered the array. TCH. Susanoo extended its hands. Almighty push. The surrounding iron demon lanterns were blown away, and Susanoo leaped high into the air, spreading its wings and flying toward the Sage of Six Paths. The Tenga warrior with wings spread flew through the air, while below, the relentless iron demon lanterns chased after it, occasionally spitting fireballs from their burning wicks toward the sky. Madara skillfully maneuvered Susanoo through the air. In the distance, the Sage of Six Paths, whose size was now vastly different from Susanoo's, floated above the moon pattern in the center of the array. The box of ultimate bliss was once a tool in my hands, he said with a compassionate smile. Summoning jutsu. Boom. White smoke rose, and the box of ultimate bliss reappeared in a spot where it had vanished earlier. Damn it. In the illusory space, Kaido frowned, clearly annoyed. I actually didn't think of this. Stop complaining. Madara's voice rang out. Let's go. Susanoo manifested a long sword in each hand, wielding the massive blades to slash at the Sage of Six Paths. The Sage of Six Paths remained seated in the air, calmly looking up at the enormous blades descending toward him. Just as the blades were about to reach his head, he casually raised his staff. Crack. The massive blades in Susanoo's hands instantly shattered. What is that? Madara, controlling Susanoo, dodged a few fireballs spat out by the iron demon lanterns and soared into the air again. Madara used Susanoo's eyes, enhanced by the Rinnegan, to carefully observe the black staff in the Sage of Six Paths' hands. Kaido and Izuna infused their ocular power into the array. Are you curious? The Sage of Six Paths shook the black staff in his hand, which had sun and moon designs on either end. The staff suddenly melted and shrank, transforming into a black orb that floated in his palm. This is the truth-seeking ball. It contains the power of all yin-yang and the five elements. All yin-yang and the five elements. Madara was stunned. That is a power beyond KK Genkai and KK Toda. Correct. It is a technique formed by combining all 7 chakra nature transformations. It can be called KK Mora. As the Sage of Six Paths spoke, he floated to the center of the array and landed on the ground. A deep gray color spread from his feet, slowly erosion the blue spiritual light of the array beneath him. This is bad. He is using the aura of the Pure Land to seize control of my array. Kaido took a deep breath. Fortunately, we're hiding inside Susanoo, and Susanoo's construction incorporates my spiritual energy and Ramyaku's power. Otherwise, your souls, which have already been tainted by the Pure Land's aura, would definitely be under the Sage of Six Paths' control. Why are you saying this now? Inma is about to be taken away. Izuna was frantic. Damn it. Madara tried several times, but every time he got close to the Sage of Six Paths, he was blocked by the truth-seeking ball, which transformed into various shapes. He didn't dare touch the thing and was forced to retreat. I'm ready. Kaido in the illusory space closed his eyes, and the array beneath him began to rotate. Now it's my turn. It's time to reveal the final backup plan. Huh? You still have a trump card? Izuna was astonished. Of course. Kaido's voice echoed in the space. Preparing multiple backup plans is my habit. Good habit. You must keep it up. At this moment, Susanoo's eyes transformed again, this time into the 5-pointed star pattern of the Mengekyo Sharingan. Honestly, it took me a while to recall the spatial coordinates where this thing was stored. Kaido's voice came through. But I finally remembered. Susanoo crouched and slapped the ground, and spiritual energy rapidly and automatically formed a massive array. Come forth. The largest Ramyaku crystal. Boom. White smoke dispersed. Glistening and radiant, an enormous Ramyaku crystal was barely held in Susanoo's arms. Chapter 274, Ramyaku Crystal? The Sage of Six Paths, who had been leisurely eroding the array, suddenly changed his expression. The staff in his hand flew out, transforming into a twisted spear that shot towards Susanoo. Ignoring the attack, Susanoo tightly held the massive Rumyaku crystal. Kaido shouted, and the crystal began to merge into Susanoo's body, causing a brilliant golden light to erupt around them. Rumyaku protection. A golden barrier suddenly appeared, blocking the relatively small spear and the pursuing iron demon lanterns. Crack. The barrier quickly developed cracks. By this time, the massive Rumyaku crystal had completely merged into Susanoo's body, turning its entire form into a golden hue. Crack, crack. The cracks on the barrier continued to expand. Susanoo's hands rapidly formed hand seals, moving so fast they became a blur. Kaito's voice rang out, "Disciple Kaido, humbly requests Lord Abe no Sai, in this moment of dire urgency, act swiftly as commanded." Susanoo opened its left hand, and a bellflower seal appeared on its palm. A stream of golden water surged out from the bellflower seal. Crack. The golden barrier surrounding Susanoo shattered like glass, fragments scattering everywhere. The black spear shot forward like lightning. Oh my! The golden water solidified into a humanoid figure. As the golden light faded, Igno Sai stood on Susanoo's palm, pointing his fan forward. The black spear instantly stopped in midair. At the same time, he raised his left hand and slapped forward. A transparent golden talisman appeared in his palm. Go. He formed a seal with his left hand. The talisman traced an arc in the air, instantly duplicating itself. The arc branched into countless lines, simultaneously striking all the Iron Demon lanterns. The arcs disappeared, and the Iron Demon lanterns all froze in place, each with an identical transparent talisman affixed to their heads. The talismans flashed and merged into the Iron Demon lanterns. In the next moment, these demons slowly returned to their original forms, becoming lifeless objects once more. Susanoo opened its mouth, and Kaito's voice came through, "Lord Sai, the situation is urgent. We had no choice but to trouble you." "Not a problem, not a problem." Sai's eyes swept over the scene, and he immediately understood what was happening. He gently waved his fan, and the black spear melted into a sphere, spinning back to its owner. The Sage of Six Paths reached out and caught the truth-seeking ball, which melted and reformed into his staff. Standing at the center of the array, the Sage of Six Paths looked up and stared at the figure standing on Susanoo's palm. "Are you the legendary Abe no Sai?" Sai elegantly fanned himself and nodded with a smile. "Indeed, it is I. I am honored that the Sage of Six Paths, known to the world as Hagoromo, knows of my humble name. Compared to Lord Sai, I am but a mere junior." The reputation of Sai was undeniable. Facing him, the Sage of Six Paths no longer maintained his earlier calm demeanor, and the compassionate aura around him diminished significantly. "When I was young, I heard my mother mention you in passing. She once expressed relief at your disappearance," the Sage of Six Paths said solemnly. "Though I do not know what transpired, it seems even my mother felt wary of your existence. Is that so? It is somewhat embarrassing. At the time, I was powerless against the invasion of those from beyond the heavens. In the end, I could only seek to protect myself." Sai's brows furrowed slightly in a refined manner, his sight tugging at the heartstrings of anyone who heard it, making one want to reach out and smooth a faint crease on his forehead. Inside the illusory space within the gem on Susanoo's forehead, Kaido had opened his eyes, his expression relaxed as he watched the exchange between Sai and the Sage of Six Paths through the projected view. This is truly. That pretentious Sage of Six Paths has finally met his match in pretentiousness. Kaido laughed with delight. Izuna looked at the scene projected in the space with a complex expression, then turned to Kaido and couldn't help but say, "Now I understand why you've become more and more pretentious." Madara also shot him a disdainful look. "Not at all, not at all." Kaito smiled even more brightly. "Compared to Lord Sai, I still have a long way to go." "How modest of you, Kaido." A somewhat illusory figure rose from the center of the array beneath the three of them. Sai's phantom appeared in the illusory space, fanning himself as he smiled at Kaido, his praise sounding utterly sincere. "It has been a long time since I've seen a young man as outstanding as you, Kaido." Kaido choked for a moment, but soon a flattered smile appeared on his face as he bowed deeply. Thank you for your praise, Lord Sai, and for coming to our rescue. We are deeply grateful." Madara and Izuna also bowed slightly. "Not a problem, not a problem. After all, the power of Inma was entrusted to you by me." Sai's smile became more genuine. As Kaido and Sai spoke, the conversation between Sai and the Sage of Six Paths continued. "Lord Sai, have you appeared here for the power of Enma as well?" The Sage of Six Paths did not stop eroding the array beneath his feet. "In my view, a pure land without order and rules is not the best choice for the world." Sai closed his fan and drew a line in the air, leaving behind a golden trail. Countless transparent golden talismans flew out from it, tracing golden arcs in the air before landing and attaching to various nodes of the array. The array immediately glowed with a brilliant golden light, and the pure land aura being emitted by the Sage of Six Paths began to slowly retreat back into his body. From the scene, it was clear that the previously blue array had been mostly tainted by gray. Now, with the nodes turning golden, the blue began to drive out the gray. It seems Lord Sai wishes to rebuild the Yellow Springs Hell. The Sage of Six Paths planted his staff on the ground, and the gray on the array stopped retreating, stalemating with the blue. For the world, rebuilding the Yellow Springs Hell is necessary. Sai's expression turned serious for a moment before he smiled again. However, I have always been rather lazy, so I entrusted this matter to Kaido. To Kaido? The Sage of Six Paths frowned slightly. You actually gave up the opportunity to control the Yellow Springs Nation. I have also always wanted to ask why Lord Sai did not personally take charge of the Yellow Springs. Kaido in the illusory space asked the same question. Kaido, you overestimate me. Sai's phantom gracefully sat down. I have guarded Ramyaku for 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is far too long for me. If it were not for the unresolved threat of the Otsutsuki clan, I would have likely fallen into a deep slumber long ago. Kaido immediately understood. Legend had it that Sai was the son of a white fox. Though a half-demon, he resolutely abandoned his demonic side, choosing to live and die as a human, seeking a natural end to his life. 1,000 years had passed, yet his resolve remained unchanged. Moreover, during their first meeting, Sai had spoken such words. Truly, Lord Sai is remarkable. Kaido felt deep admiration. After all, he himself had no such resolve, instead harboring ambitions for power and evolution. Though he did not fully understand Sai, he genuinely admired the man's character. Kaido, there is no need for sentiment. Sai said with ease. It is merely a personal choice and pursuit, nothing worthy of praise. Chapter 275, In the Outside World, facing the Sage of Six Paths, Sai covered his face with his fan and simply replied. I merely chose to leave troublesome matters to the younger generation. Leaving it to the younger generation? Lord Sai's carefree attitude truly leaves me in awe. The Sage of Six Paths said, though it was unclear whether he believed it or not. In that case, hey Goromo, would you kindly withdraw? Sai smiled. After all, Kaido can be considered a junior of your family. Lord Sai, you jest. The Sage of Six Paths showed no intention of leaving. Today, I am deeply honored to meet a legendary figure as graceful and refined as you. He tapped his staff on the ground again, the rings hanging from its head jingling softly. However, the Sage of Six Paths tapped his staff 3 times. I will never willingly relinquish the power of the Pure Land. 3 identical curse patterns spread across the ground beneath his feet, and 3 figures slowly rose from them. Hamura, Indra, Ashura. The Sage of Six Paths called their names. Hamura, Indra, and Ashura opened their eyes simultaneously. Brother. Old man. Father. Oh my, I see now. Sai took a step forward, leaping down from Susanu's hand and landing gracefully on the ground. He fanned himself as he slowly walked forward, speaking in a tone as if he were having a friendly conversation, though the content of his words was anything but ordinary. Hey Goromo, Hamura. For 1,000 years, I have never ceased observing humanity, yet the 2 of you have always remained elusive to me. You are the children of the planet's invader, Otsutsuki Kaguya, yet you sealed away your own mother for the sake of the humans on this planet. Whether it was dividing the power of the divine tree, founding the shinobi sect to spread chakra, or guarding the seal on the moon, all your actions were for the peace and stability of the world. To be honest, I was somewhat suspicious of your true intentions back then. Were you truly protecting the world, or were you seeking to occupy it and seize its power in preparation for the arrival of other Otsutsuki clan members? Sai stopped walking as he finished speaking, exactly standing at the edge of the array. The Sage of Six Paths and his brother Hamura fell silent for a moment, but Indra spoke up. Old man, who is this guy? Hamura and Ashura also looked over curiously. The Sage of Six Paths solemnly introduced. This is the legendary Great Onmyoji, Ibno Sai, Lord Sai. So it is Lord Sai. My apologies for the earlier rudeness. Hamura bowed politely. Ah. I remember now. I've read stories about the Great Onmyoji Ibno Sai. Ashura, after a moment of thought, suddenly raised his hand enthusiastically and smiled brightly at Sai. Lord Sai, I'm Ashura. I really loved reading about you when I was a kid. Standing beside Ashura, Indra's face darkened as he slapped his brother on the back. Shut up. Brother. Ashura looked aggrieved, tears welling up in his eyes. You used to love reading about Lord Simi too when we were kids. Don't you remember how we used to read those books together? Seeing his burly, rough-looking brother making such a pitiful expression, Indra quickly averted his eyes. The usually silent Indra was internally complaints non-stop. The pretending to be pitiful trick hasn't worked on me since Ashura was 5. Who would have thought that after thousands of years, this guy is still using it? Sometimes I don't know whether to admire his perseverance or despise his lack of self-awareness. Just look at his face. Ugh! Brother! Ashura suddenly cried out sad sound. Indra turned his head to see Ashura staring at him in disbelief, tears glistening at the corners of his eyes. What's wrong? Indra asked, then quickly looked away again. Ugh! What is this guy doing? That face is getting more and more unbearable to look at. Someone like this is definitely not the brother the most handsome man in heaven and earth. Indra, will admit. Indra's thoughts began to drift. I really miss the cute little brother from before he turned 5. Come to think of it, why did Ashura end up looking like this? Ah, it must be the old man's fault. Ashura grew uglier the more he resembled the old man. What a family tragedy. Huh? Indra suddenly felt something was off. Did my thoughts just get broadcasted? Did my thoughts just get broadcasted? Indeed. Indeed. This time, Indra was certain. His face darkened as he glared at Simi in the distance. Damn it. It's your doing, isn't it? He was now furious, grinding his teeth as he spoke harsh words. Let me make this clear, I don't hold much respect for someone who only exists in old books, so don't expect me to hold back. There's no need for you to care about my identity. I am merely a humble onmyoji. Simi said gently, covering his face with his fan, then pointed to the spots beside and behind Indra. However, it seems there's something important you need to deal with right now. Indra's body stiffened as he slowly turned his head. Brother. Ashura's voice was choked with sobs, tears streaming down his face. So the reason you stopped treating me as well as you did when we were kids is because you think I'm ugly. Woo-wah-woo. It's not like I chose to look like this. Woo-wah-woo. This is so hurtful. Woo-wah-woo. Ashura's heart was filled with indignation. As Indra's brother, his inner world was just as colorful. To be honest, compared to my brother, I think I look more manly, right? My brother really knows how to talk nonsense. Is he serious? Calling himself the most handsome man in heaven and earth? PFFT. Come to think of it, it must be the old man's fault. My brother must have such distorted aesthetics because he hates the old man so much, which is why he dislikes me for looking like him. To be honest. Dislike me for looking like him? What? What? Ashura in horror covered his mouth and looked over. Sure enough, both his brother and father's faces now looked as terrifying as evil spirit. Sure enough. As terrifying as evil spirit. No, no, no. I can't think anymore. No, no, no. Ashura covered his mouth and shook his head vigorously, his head becoming a blur. Truth-seeking balls. The Sage of Six Paths slammed his staff on the ground, and the 9 truth-seeking balls around him suddenly rose, spinning around him and his 2 sons. My apologies, but I need to handle some family matters first. Please. Simi gestured politely. Hamura silently stepped aside. Whoosh. The 9 truth-seeking balls instantly merged, forming a massive black curtain that completely enveloped the Sage of Six Paths and his 2 sons. What followed was a period of silent waiting. Hamura awkwardly stared at the distant ceiling of the hall, while Simi continued to fan himself leisurely. Whoosh! The black curtain fell, transforming back into the truth-seeking balls. The Sage of Six Paths walked out, holding his staff, with Indra and Ashura following behind him, their heads lowered in silence. Now then. The Sage of Six Paths glanced serious at the towering figure of Inma nearby. Lord Simi, shall we continue our earlier discussion? Chapter 276, Simi followed the Sage of Six Paths' lead and asked. Then let us discuss. What is your intention, hey Gormo? The Sage of Six Paths now understood that it was meaningless to engage in empty pleasantries with a legendary figure like Abe no Simi. In that case, it would be better to be somewhat direct. The Pure Land is a place where I have cultivated for thousands of years. I cannot simply hand it over. The Sage of Six Paths said, his tone firmer. Even if my opponent is Lord Simi. Simi still smiled gracefully. Hey Gormo, you misunderstand. I am here only for Inma. The matter of the Pure Land is not part of our discussion. The Sage of Six Paths felt that Simi's he was somewhat unpleasant to the ear, but since the man smiled so beautifully, he couldn't say anything about it. However, the words spoken by this legendary figure were also quite unpleasant. At this moment, Inma indeed had nothing to do with the Pure Land. However, whoever inherited Inma's power would inevitably use it to either fill the Pure Land or rebuild the Yellow Springs Nation, both of which would be closely tied to the Pure Land. The Pure Land was now the foundation of their family. How could he possibly let it go? Thinking this, he spoke up. Lord Cimi, you jest. Surely you understand how crucial Inma's power is to the Pure Land. Moreover, when the Yellow Springs is rebuilt, it will mark the destruction of the Pure Land. My brother Hamura and I have once saved the world. Why must we now give up even our place of refuge? A sense of tragic heroism emanated from the Sage of Six Paths, and his brother and sons looked at Cimi with sad and angry eyes. Of course, being somewhat direct also required a bit of performance. Era? Cimi was thoroughly taken aback and raised his fan to cover his face. Why do I suddenly seem like the villain? Ha 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 ha. Kaido completely lost his composure, laughing so hard he nearly fell over. The Sage of Six Paths and his family really don't play by the rules. Even Lord Cimi couldn't handle that. Madara and Izuna had already re-evaluated their opinions of the so-called progenitors of the Uchiha and Senju clans after hearing Indra and Ashura's inner thoughts. Madara stated that Hashirama might have been deeply influenced by Ashura's chakra, but he himself bore no resemblance to Indra whatsoever. He believed it was because his soul was stable and his will unwavering, so he hadn't been influenced at all. Kaido and Izuna silently complains. No, you were influenced just as much as Hashirama. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've encountered such a worthy opponent. Cimi said, suddenly interested. Forgive my bluntness. Cimi, facing the Sage of Six Paths and his family, lowered his fan slightly, revealing his fox-like eyes with their upward tilted corners. Hagoromo and Hamura, as the sons of Kaguya, should have inherited the immortality of the Otsutsuki clan. Yet, you now exist in the form of souls and chakra. It seems you have long been determined to lay claim to the Pure Land. As for Indra and Ashura, born from Hagoromo's union with a human, you have been reincarnating through chakra. Who's to say you aren't trying to master the Kamo unique to the Otsutsuki clan? That's very possible. Kaito said, stroking his chin after hearing Cimi's words. Every time Indra and Ashura's chakra reincarnates, it chooses the most talented descendants of their bloodline. If they were to master them, they could easily take over the most talented bodies. Madara's face immediately darkened. Izuna also felt a chill. What about Sasuke? Sasuke is safe for now. Kaito said, watching with interest as Cimi and the Sage of Six Paths continued their confrontation. We don't need to worry about that for the time being. TCH. Izuna looked at Kaido's engrossed expression and had a premonition that this kid would only become more troublesome in the future. In the hall of Inma, after Cimi finished speaking, Ashura couldn't help but blurt out. How do you know about Akama? Ah. Did you find that guy, Ishiki? Silence. Awkward silence. Indra resisted the urge to facepalm and turned to glare at Ashura. It seems my guess was not wrong. Indeed, Otsutsuki Ishiki has been sealed by Kaido and his companions, Ashura. Cimi said, lowering his fan and giving Ashura a grateful smile. Ashura tightly covered his mouth with both hands again. The Sage of Six Paths had just been about to deny Cimi's word when his foolish son stabbed him in the back. He barely managed to keep his expression steady. What a family tragedy. One son is stubborn, the other is clueless, and neither is filial. Thankfully, I still have Hamura, who is at least somewhat obedient. The Sage of Six Paths gave a gratified look to Hamura beside him. Hamura smiled, confused and unsure of the reason. In that case, Hagoromo, you are quite cunning. Cimi said, not letting the Sage of Six Paths off the hook. With an elegant demeanor, he spoke sharp and biting words. Back then, the Toad Sage Fukasaku from Mount Mayabaka went to great lengths to guide you in sealing Kaguya. To this day, that poor toad still takes pride in it. I wonder if it ever realized whether it guided you, or if you allowed yourself to be guided by it. Lord Cimi, you also had a hand in those events, didn't you? The Sage of Six Paths finally regained his composure. Back then, I felt that many things were beyond Fukasaku's understanding. Many coincidences must have had another person's involvement, but I could never trace it. Moreover, the Sage of Six Paths' expression darkened. Our mother's sudden change in temperament must also have had a reason. Indeed, it was my doing. Cimi said lightly, fanning himself as he spoke terrifying words with a calm and magnanimous demeanor. I infused a curse into the divine tree's fruit through Ramyaku absorbed by the tree. A curse? The Sage of Six Paths and Hamura exchanged glances, suddenly understanding many things. No wonder Mother became increasingly greedy and restless. After severing ties with the main Otsutsuki clan, she desperately sought to amass power, even trying to reclaim the power she had given to me and Hamura. By then, She was no longer herself. Sage of Six Paths finally lost his composed expression. He looked at Siamai with a completely new gaze and couldn't help but say, "Truly, you are worthy of being called Lord Siamai. You flatter me, hey Goromo." Siamai said, furrowing his brows with a sigh once more. This planet is powerless against the Otsutsuki clan. To delay the arrival of others from that clan, I had no choice but to resort to such measures. His tone was filled with helplessness, and his elegant and refined demeanor made it seem as though everything he did was out of necessity. Anyone seeing him would think, how difficult it must be for such a noble figure to act against his principles. And they would inevitably feel heartache for him. Lord Siamai really is remarkable. Kaido's eyes were filled with admiration. This demeanor is perfect. It feels like no matter what wrong he does, he can be forgiven. I must learn this. Kaito internally shouted in his heart. Is this what a legendary great Onmyoji is like? Madara and Izuna felt at a loss for words. Have you Onmyoji gone off the rails? Chapter 277. No matter how much Kaito admires and yearns for Siamai, as the other party involved, the Sage of Six Paths was thoroughly choked by Siamai's demeanor. There was also a slight irritation at having his secrets exposed. Of course, it was only a slight irritation. After all, someone who has lived for thousands of years no longer experiences such intense emotional fluctuations and can view many things with calm detachment. However, only the Sage of Six Paths and Hamura felt this way. Indra and Azura, even after such a long time, still found their emotions difficult to control. Humphrey, I don't understand what you're all babbling about here. Indra uncontrollably stepped out from behind the Sage of Six Paths. Old man, you can't possibly think that the current situation can be resolved with words, can you? He lifted his delicate chin high, his beautiful red eyes darting around as he arrogantly looked at Siamai. In this world, anything you want must be fought for with strength. The world has always been in the hands of those who possess power. No matter how much you talk, it all comes down to who has the greater strength. You, the Onmyoji who is said to fight with Shikigami, do you even have any Shikigami serving you now? Brother. Azura also rushed forward to stand side by side with Indra. Brother, you haven't changed. You still place too much importance on strength. He turned his gaze to Siamai as well, his words filled with sincerity. Lord Siamai, if it's you, then you should understand that the future of the world should be entrusted to us. Not only because only the Otsutsuki can face the Otsutsuki head-on, but also because whether it's father, uncle, or even my brother and I, we all deeply love this world. What Azura said is also my intention. The Sage of Six Paths tapped his staff on the ground once more. Everything I have done over the millennia has been to counter the impending threat of the Otsutsuki clan. Although the power I possess was granted by my mother, its roots lie in the planet itself. I will use this power to protect the planet. Lord Siamai, your goal is also to protect the planet, isn't it? Azura took another step forward, his sincere attitude and voice exuding a peculiar charisma. There is no conflict in our objectives. If we fight, regardless of who wins or loses, it will be a loss for the planet. Why can't we, out of love for the planet, cooperate and stand together as comrades to protect it? As Azura and the Sage of Six Paths expressed their stances, Indra, standing to the side, remained cold-faced, exuding an astonishing aura of anger. Hamura, as always, remained silent. Azura-kun, you are truly a frightening person. Your proposal almost swayed even me. Siamai once again covered his mouth and nose with his fan, lowering his eyes as he chuckled softly. Azura was momentarily stunned, then smiled brightly and emphasized. Every word I said came from the heart. That's precisely what makes it even more frightening, isn't it? Siamai's gaze toward Azura turned slightly colder. After all, you truly believe that everything you do is for the sake of protecting the planet. Within the illusory space, Madara felt a pang in his chest, suddenly recalling the moment when Hashirama's blade pierced through his body from behind. Hashirama's desire to kill him had also been genuine. Whether it's a friend, a brother, or even my own descendant. Anyone who dares to harm the village will not be forgiven. When Hashirama had uttered those words, Madara had almost wanted to laugh. Because it was just too ridiculous. That man had already forgotten that it was the tragic death of his younger brother that had driven him to seek peace in order to protect his family. It was all like an incredibly ironic cycle. That guy, who had sought peace for the sake of his loved ones and friends, had ended up killing his best friend for the sake of the village he created to achieve that peace. So Madara understood perfectly what Siamai meant when he called Azura frightening. Indra also understood. Azura, however, had no idea why Siamai would describe him that way. Why would Lord Siamai say that? He tilted his head, scratching it with a naive smile. If we're talking about who's frightening, my brother is the scarier one. I've always been well liked, you know. Azura, you bastard. Indra was immediately incensed by Azura's words. Ha ha ha. Azura turned back, waving his hands with an awkward laugh. I didn't mean it like that. It's just what everyone says. Brother, you're actually a kind person, but for some reason, people always misunderstand you and are afraid of you. At least you know your place. Indra snorted, turning his face away coldly. Azura really is terrifying. Indra was just pacified like that. Kaido remarked with an amazed tone. The so-called Sundeer type is no match for the straightforward type. That bastard Hashirama Senju was the same. Izuna said through gritted teeth, sneaking a glance at Madara. His gaze was filled with frustration at Madara's lack of resistance. Don't look at me. Madara shuddered as if struck by an electric current. Lord Mai, please tell me your thoughts. Azura spoke up again. In my opinion, for the sake of protecting the planet, we share a common goal and a common enemy. We should unite and fight together. He bowed deeply. Lord Mai, please let go of this meaningless conflict. Faced with Azura's offensive, Mai remained leisurely fanning himself, pondering for a moment. Well, how should I put this? He closed his fan and lightly tapped it against his palm. Azura-kun. Yes. Azura showed deep respect for his elder. I must decline. Mai said with a smile. Why? Azura continued to stare at Mai with stubborn eyes. Because your father and uncle are Otsutsuki, and because I believe they do not belong to this planet. Mai replied bluntly, meeting Azura's gaze. What I wish to see is the planet's own rise, not relying on the Otsutsuki to counter the Otsutsuki. Even if the planet remains unharmed, the world would still be in the hands of the Otsutsuki. His gaze shifted past Azura, directly landing on the Sage of Six Paths. Forgive me, but I cannot be certain of your stance. Therefore, the future of the planet cannot be entrusted to you. I see. The Sage of Six Paths extended his staff to stop Azura, who was about to speak again. Forgive my bluntness, Lord Mai, but the Kaito you have entrusted also carries the bloodline of the Otsutsuki clan. After thousands of years, the descendants you left behind have long since become human. I am not so harsh as to hold that against them. Mai slowly walked along the edge of the magic circle on the ground. Moreover, Kaido-kun's existence is a gift from fate. Born with a chakra-insulated body, he naturally awakened spiritual power at the age of 3, began self-studying on Myojutsu at 12, and mastered it by 17. At 20, he began to communicate with the dragon veins, and by 22, he had fully established that connection. He single-handedly defeated the Demon King Inma, collecting all of Inma's soul power. Kaido-kun is meticulous in thought, calm in nature, neither venting his hatred on the innocent nor acting impulsively in the face of provocation. He possesses power but remains humble, and knows how to communicate with others. The Uchiha clan has pledged their lives to him, the demons of Mount Hama trust him, the summoning beasts seek to cooperate with him, and even the shinobi will stand behind him. With a flick, Mai opened his fan and smiled. In short, I have high hopes for Kaido-kun. Chapter 278, Lord Mai. Listening to Mai's words, Kaido, who had always been 100% confident, felt a rare sense of unease. He couldn't help but bow deeply to Mai's illusion. Although I don't believe I live up to such praise from Lord Mai, I will certainly not disappoint your high expectations. Mai's illusion smiled, secretly winking at Madara and Izuna. There's no need to be so uneasy, Kaido-kun. He said with a tone of deep sincerity, what I said comes from the heart, and I believe Kaido-kun will bring a bright future to the planet. Yes. I will definitely achieve it. Kaido raised his head, his eyes shining with determination, feeling an endless surge of motivation. Still too young, huh? The little fox has been tricked by the old fox. Izuna stifled a laugh. But this is good too. This kid has always been a bit lazy, so this kind of encouragement might make him more proactive in the future. Sigh. The Sage of Six Paths let out a deep sigh. What a pity. It seems we cannot reach a consensus with Lord Mai. His expression was sorrowful, as if deeply hurt, the lines on his face seeming to grow deeper. I was born on this planet, raised on this planet, and have devoted my entire life to protecting it, never giving up even after death. Yet, I never expected to be rejected by Lord Mai because of my origins. Brother. Father. Both Hamura and Azura looked at him with concern. Only Indra remained expressionless, glancing at him briefly before quickly looking away, a hint of mockery flashing across his face. Mai carefully observed the expressions on their faces, then curled his lips into a smile. Words are meaningless now. The Sage of Six Paths composed himself and ordered. Hamura, Indra, Azura, from this moment on, do not let anyone approach this array. With that, he tapped his staff heavily on the ground once more. Golden light erupted from countless nodes within the array, and the talismans Siamai had placed earlier shattered one by one. The grey aura of the Pure Land churned beneath his feet, accelerating its erosion of the array's spiritual energy. For a moment, the blue spiritual energy left by Kaido within the array began to retreat steadily. Old man. You should have done this earlier. Indra was the first to dash forward, instantly closing the distance to Siamai. Black flames burned in his hand as he thrust it toward Siamai's chest. Siamai's body dissipated like an illusion, reappearing in another direction. However, Azura's chakra-clad fist was already coming straight at him. Siamai leaned back to dodge, but Indra was already standing behind him. The two brothers crossed paths, and Siamai's body completely shattered, scattering into golden fragments of light. Yer. I'm not much of a fighter. Siamai's complaining voice echoed. Indra and Azura followed the sound and saw Siamai standing on the palm of Suzunu's left hand, fanning himself as if he had never moved. Go. Siamai stomped his foot, leaving a Kikyo seal on Suzunu's palm before his figure once again dissolved into golden light and disappeared. Perfect timing. Suzunu's eyes transformed into the Rinnegan once more, and Madara's voice came from within. A long sword reappeared in Suzunu's hand, slashing toward Azura and Indra. Bring it on. Indra's eyes spun, and in an instant, another Suzunu appeared, wielding a sword to meet the attack. The two blades collided, creating a deafening clash. The resulting shockwave swept through the area, causing everyone's hair and clothes to flutter wildly in the wind. Don't forget me. Azura rode the wooden dragon into the air, and a giant wooden golem punched toward the golden Suzunu controlled by Madara. Ha 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 ha. Madara let out a maniacal laugh. Uchiha's progenitor, I have surpassed you. Limbo, border jail. Boom. An unseen attack struck the head of Indra's Suzunu, causing the massive figure to tilt backward. Boom. Azura was directly knocked off his wooden dragon, his body plummeting toward the ground. You arrogant brat. Indra's Suzunu spewed black flames from its mouth. Azura's falling body was caught by the wooden golem, and the wooden dragon soared into the air, coiling and rushing toward Madara's golden Suzunu. Not even close. Almighty push. A massive force of repulsion erupted, sending both Indra's Suzunu and Azura's wooden golem flying backward. The black flames of Amaterasu were deflected, scattering sparks that ignited fires throughout the hall. Damn it. Indra, having suffered a blow from his own reincarnated body, was utterly enraged. As expected, the Rinnegan is powerful. Azura, on the other hand, seemed unfazed, simply marveling at the display. The two of them controlled their Suzunu and wooden golem, standing up once more to block the golden Suzunu. We're not alone here. Kaido's voice rang out. The left eye of the golden Suzunu suddenly transformed into a five-pointed star-shaped Mangekyo Sharingan. Indra and Azura's vision was filled with a shower of cherry blossom petals, which disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. Before they could react, the golden Suzunu's left eye shifted back to the Rinnegan. Its long sword had already severed the wooden dragon and deeply slashed into the wooden golem's shoulder, cutting off one of its arms. So fast. Indra and Azura were startled. Was that the eye technique just now? Indra manipulated his Suzunu to slash at the golden Suzunu from the side, but the golden Suzunu swiftly retreated, its movements appearing as after images in his eyes. A time-manipulating ability? Indra frowned. No, the Mangekyo Sharingan couldn't have such a powerful technique. It must be an illusion. Ha! He unleashed the power of his eyes. Sure enough, the scene before him slowed down. It wasn't a technique that directly affected time, but an illusion that manipulated the perception of time. Azura, dispel the illusion. He shouted urgently. A technique amplified by the combined power of 3 pairs of eyes. He'll never break it. The golden Suzunu unleashed another wave of repulsion, pushing Indra back, and continued slashing toward Azura. Azura tried to release chakra to dispel the illusion, but it didn't work. The massive golden blade was already descending upon him. Swoosh! A brilliant golden sword beam fell from the sky, splitting Azura atop the wooden golem in two, then cleaving the massive wooden golem in half. The attack continued unabated, heading straight for the Sage of Six Paths within the array. Hack, Rokija Yansho. Hamura struck out with a palm strike, and 64 concentrated bursts of chakra shot from his palm, shattering the sword beam just outside the array. TCH, a wood clone? The bisected Azura turned into wood, and the golden Suzunu turned to face Indra. At this moment, the Sage of Six Paths was fully focused on using the Pure Land's aura to erode the array, while Hamura stood guard at the edge of the array, wary of Siamai's disappearance. Just as the Grey Pure Land aura was about to reach the sun and moon pattern where Inma's body and the box of ultimate bliss were located, Siamai's voice finally rang out again. It seems Inma's power is also unconsciously resisting the Pure Land. Siamai formed hand seals and suddenly reappeared on the opposite side of the array, directly across from Hamura. Teni, Datsu, Suzaku, Roku, Kachin, Sairyu, Tenko, Dayan, Genbu, Taijo, Byako, Tenku. 12 figures of varying sizes appeared simultaneously around the circular array. And finally, Tamamo no Mae. A stunning beauty in luxurious court attire smiled gracefully. Her fox ears twitched atop her head, and 9 fluffy tails swayed behind her as she stood seductively in front of Hamura. Chapter 279. The breathtakingly beautiful fox demoness lazily covered her mouth as she yawned, her voice carrying an androgynous charm. Well. See, what is it that requires you to wake me so suddenly? By the way, how long have I been asleep? You have been asleep for over 1,000 years, Lady Tamamo no Mae. See, replied. I must trouble you to help me stop the person in front of you. Really? You wake me up just to help you fight? You know I've never been fond of such brutish affairs. Tamamo no Mae complained with a hint of displeasure. See, sighed helplessly. Only you can assist me now. The opponents are the 2 sons of Otsutsuki Kaguya. Otsutsuki Kaguya. After all these years, it's now Kaguya's children causing trouble? Lord you finally summoned us again. Lord rest assured, we will surely bring victory to you. Lord The 12 divine generals surrounding the array suddenly began chattering all at once. How noisy. Tamamo no Mae muttered softly, her body surrounded by several wisps of blue fox fire. Lady Tamamo no Mae is as terrifying as ever. The 12 divine generals immediately fell silent. Kaguya's children? Tamamo no Mae glanced at Hamura in front of her, then turned her gaze to the Sage of 6 Paths standing at the center of the array, her face filled with disdain. How come all of that woman's descendants are so old and ugly? PFFT. Ajura, who was in the distance confronting the golden Susanoo, suddenly burst into laughter. Oh? What about those 2? Tamamo no Mae extended a slender finger, pointing at Indra and Ajura. Me? Ajura began enthusiastically introducing himself. Hello, we're Kaguya's grandsons. I'm Ajura, and this is my brother, Indra. Tamamo no Mae's gaze quickly swept past Ajura's face and settled on Indra. So your name is Indra? She pulled a folding fan from her sleeve and pressed it against her delicate chin, sighing with a frown. Ah, Kaguya was such a beauty, yet only one of her grandsons inherited her looks. Humphrey. Indra glanced at Ajura, who had been ignored by Tamamo no Mae, and proudly raised his chin. Is my beauty truly unappreciated here? Ajura's shoulders slumped in disappointment. Kaguya may have been an enemy, but she possessed a beauty as radiant as the moon. That grandson named Indra does bear some resemblance to Kaguya. Let's not talk about these 2 old men, but that Ajura fellow is definitely a mutation. Wasn't there someone named Ishiki with Kaguya back then? He was also the tall and burly type. I see, I think I understand now. So that's how it is. The 12 divine generals surrounding the Sage of 6 Paths in the center of the array began discussing among themselves again. The Sage of 6 Paths' face grew darker, and even his pace of eroding the array slowed for a moment. Everyone, and Lady Tamamo no Mae, now is not the time for such discussions. Mai's helpless voice rang out again. We are in a critical situation here. Huh? Everyone was momentarily stunned, finally snapping out of the beauty contest atmosphere and returning to reality. Indra and Ajura once again engaged in battle with Madara's golden Susanoo. Ahem. The Sage of 6 Paths cleared his throat, his staff jingling. Lord if you insist on obstructing me, do not blame me for showing no mercy. There's no need for such concerns. We are merely each following our own paths. Mai said, his hands forming seals. 12 divine generals, heed my command. Align the celestial stems and earthly branches, guide the sun and moon, take your positions, and seize the array with all your might. At Lord Mai's command. The 12 divine generals rose into the air, each descending toward different nodes of the array. Go. The Sage of 6 Paths tapped his staff on the ground. The 9 truth-seeking orbs circling at his feet spun rapidly, transforming into sharp spikes and scattering. No need to worry. Mai's body radiated a brilliant spiritual light. Shield. Golden spherical barriers erupted from the bodies of the 12 divine generals and Mai himself, firmly protecting them. Bang. The black spikes formed from the truth-seeking orbs collided with the golden barriers, producing a crisp clanging sound before being deflected back. Mai soared into the air, finally occupying a crucial node in the array. Hold the nodes and seize the array. Golden energy, like lightning, shot out from his body, connecting with the 12 divine generals and outlining a peculiar pattern within the array. Hum. The ground trembled slightly, and in an instant, most of the array beneath their feet was dyed golden. Hamura. The Sage of 6 Paths no longer had the leisure to attack with the truth-seeking orbs. Gripping his staff with both hands, he focused all his energy on defending the portion of the array he controlled, but he was still being pushed back step by step. He could only call for Hamura's assistance. 8 trigrams. Hamura raised his palm. I said, don't forget I'm still here. The wisps of blue foxfire surrounding Tomomonome shot straight toward Hamura. Though I dislike fighting. She waved her folding fan, and more foxfire continuously flew out from it. I can't let you disturb my 64 palms of vacuum. Hamura had no choice but to retreat first. The chakra from his palms collided with a foxfire, exploding into bursts of blue fireworks in the air. After he retreated, Tomomonome suddenly stopped her attacks. She swayed her fan seductively, her eyes narrowing as she looked at him. Her alluring red lips parted as she spoke in a lazy tone. I said, as long as you don't disturb I won't attack you. Why bother with all this exhausting fighting? Why don't we just stand here and wait for the outcome of their contest? I cannot comply. Hamura's pure white eyes suddenly shone with a dazzling light. His body was enveloped in green chakra, and spinning truth-seeking orbs appeared behind him. Please step aside. He extended his hand, unleashing a powerful force of repulsion. Boom. Tomomonome raised her arm to shield her face, her 9 tails waving wildly to maintain balance as her feet slid backward involuntarily. Hamura flew into the air, heading straight for Mai's position in the array. I'm angry now. Tomomonome lifted her head, a strand of her neatly combed hair falling loose and dangling over her forehead. She reached up to adjust the slightly askew hair ornament on her head. The corners of her eyes grew even redder, and her once seductive gaze turned into cold, golden beast-like pupils. Heaven's descent. The 9 tails behind Tomomonome ignited with blue foxfire, all flipping forward and extending infinitely, shooting toward Hamura like lightning. Hamura dodged sideways in midair, but the foxfire-covered tails shot past him, then turned around and lunged at him again. Hamura had no choice but to retreat further. Meanwhile, Tomomonome, with her seductive steps, moved deceptively quickly past him, turning to block his path. The 9 tails extended endlessly, swaying in the air and forming a massive net that spread across the sky in front of Hamura. Impertinent one, you shall not advance any further. Tomomonome pointed her fan at Hamura. Hamura silently extended his right hand, gathering chakra into a green orb in his palm, which he shot straight at Tomomonome. Snap. One of the tails lashed out like a whip, smacking the orb away and continuing its trajectory toward Hamura's face. Hamura dodged, but more tails were already whipping toward him. Hamura raised his hand, and several truth-seeking orbs spun rapidly around his wrist, forming a silver ring. Silver will reincarnation explosion. A whirlwind erupted from the silver ring, scattering the incoming tails. Chapter 280, Tomomonome's 9 tails danced wildly in the silver whirlwind as Hamura seized the opportunity to close the distance, attempting to quickly break through Tomomonome's blockade. The figure enveloped in green chakra traced a zigzagging arc through the air, weaving through the gaps between the intertwined tails. You! Tomomonome suddenly retracted her infinitely extending 9 tails, her cold eyes fixed on Hamura, who was getting closer and closer. The blue foxfire faded, and her golden beast-like pupils shone like the sun through a glacier. Cold yet dazzling. Hamura's figure was now within arm's reach, about to soar past her. Brahma's 9 tails. The 9 tails behind Tomomonome ignited with golden flames, blooming like a night-blooming cirrus in an instant. Hamura was completely surrounded by the 9 tails, forced to halt his movement. As the progenitor of the Hyuga clan's Byakugan, his eyes undoubtedly saw Tomomonome's movements, but he was completely unable to dodge this attack. He spread his arms, unleashing a powerful force of repulsion from his body. However, the tails merely swayed in the repulsive force, refusing to be pushed away. At this moment, the tails, now burning with golden flames, gradually transformed into semi-transparent energy forms, detaching from Tomomonome's body. Tomomonome floated backward gracefully, her 9 tails still swaying gently behind her. This ends here, child of Kaguya. She spread her arms, and the golden tails surrounding Hamura instantly closed in, intertwining as the golden flames surged upward and exploded. A chaotically spinning green sphere flew out from the flames. Several truth-seeking orbs enveloped in green chakra spun rapidly around Hamura, blocking all damage as he charged straight toward Tomomonome. Ah! See my. Tomomonome complained, her body beginning to dissipate like an illusion. If this fight continues, will I have to make myself even more disheveled? No, absolutely not. Hamura passed by the dissipating Tomomonome, glancing back. Tomomonome had vanished, leaving behind a phantom fox mask floating in the air. The moment Hamura turned his head, the eyes of the fox mask lit up with a red glow, meeting his gaze. The illusions innate to fox demons were unfamiliar to shinobi like Hamura, who were accustomed to observing chakra flow to counter such techniques. At this moment, Hamura didn't notice anything unusual. But when he turned back to continue forward, he suddenly realized that the distance between him and Seimai in the array was stretching infinitely. No matter how much he accelerated, the distance between them didn't close at all. The essence of a shinobi's Ganjutsu is to disturb the opponent's senses with chakra, but a yokai's illusions are different. Many yokai illusions don't directly affect the opponent's senses but instead create illusions out of thin air to deceive and confuse them. This is especially true for fox demons, whose mastery of illusions is unparalleled. So when Hamura stopped and tried to dispel the illusion, the scene before him remained unchanged. Tomomonome had only disturbed his senses for a moment when he met the gaze of the fox mask, causing his direction of movement to shift. Once he continued forward on the wrong path, everything he saw became a real illusion. Thus, when he tried to dispel the illusion using his usual methods, he couldn't erase the bizarre scene before him. From the Sage of Six Paths perspective, just as Hamura finally broke through Tomomonome's blockade and stepped into the array, he suddenly turned and bypassed the array, charging into the thick darkness in the front half of the hall. I've lost. The gray aura of the Pure Land at the Sage of Six Paths feet was pushed back step by step, eventually forced back into his body. The ground trembled again, and the massive array suddenly radiated a brilliant golden light, drawing everyone's attention. In the distance, Indra and Azura simultaneously disengaged from the battle, once again facing off against Madara's golden Susanoo. Gold will reincarnation explosion. Hamura's voice rang out from the darkness on the other side. Swoosh! A golden sword light cut through the darkness as Hamura emerged, holding a golden light sword in his hand. Brother! Hamura raised the massive light sword high. Since we failed to seize the array, let me destroy it instead. Hamura-kun, you no longer have a chance. Seimai, now in complete control of the array, held a hand seal. At the same time, the Kikyo seal left by Seimai on the palm of the Susanoo controlled by Kaido and the others suddenly lit up. Blinding golden light shot up from the array, and Hamura, avoiding the direction of the Sage of Six Paths, raised the massive golden light sword and slashed downward. A deafening collision echoed as a raging storm swept through the hall, shattering the black stone tiles on the floor. After a long while, the dazzling golden light gradually subsided, and everything became clear again. A chasm-like fissure extended from Hamura's feet but abruptly stopped at the edge of the array. Within the array, Seimai and his 12 divine generals remained unharmed. The Susanoo controlled by Kaito and the others, as well as Tomomonome, had also entered the array. In contrast, the Sage of Six Paths, who had originally been inside the array, was now expelled from it, standing at the edge of the array with a grave expression, not far from Hamura. Lord Seimai. The golden Susanoo dissipated, and the spirits of Kaido and the others descended from the air. I never expected that while seizing the array, you could also silently modify its structure. Kaido floated to Seimai's side, marveling at the array on the ground. Originally, this array was meant to fuse the power of Enma, but now it can be used in reverse to defend against external attacks using Enma's power. This is incredible. As expected of Lord Seimai. He looked up at Seimai with admiration. Seimai smiled modestly and said, I've merely lived a long time. With time, Kaido-kun, you will also be able to achieve this. No, just thinking about it makes it seem incredibly difficult. Kaido shook his head, though his expression showed no sign of discouragement. But I will strive to make this my goal and train hard. Do your best, Kaido-kun. I have high hopes for you. Seimai encouraged him warmly. Seimai. The sound of wooden sandals echoed as Tomomonome swayed over, her gaze hooking onto Kaido for a moment, her crimson lips curling into a faint smile. Kaido couldn't help but shiver. Tomomonome chuckled softly, then turned her gaze to Seimai as if nothing had happened. What exactly is going on now, Seimai? Aren't you going to explain it to me? Tomomonome leaned her delicate body against Seimai, her red lacquered fingertips sliding out from her sleeve and slowly tracing across Seimai's chest. Please don't tease me like this, Lady Tomomonome. Seimai's expression remained unchanged. There are still important matters to attend to. Rest assured, I will explain everything to you afterward. How boring. Tomomonome snorted coldly, straightening up and standing to the side. Though she said nothing more, her piercing gaze occasionally swept over the others. Kaido tried to ignore her gaze and looked directly at the Sage of Six Paths and his family, who had regrouped outside the array. He asked, Lord Seimai, what should we do next? Chapter 281, Seimai smiled at Kaido and said, Kaido-kun, have you forgotten? I am merely a helper you summoned. Therefore, what to do next is entirely up to you to decide. I understand. Kaido replied, coming to his senses with a smile. Lord Seimai is so reliable that I couldn't help but develop a sense of dependence. He shook his head and met Seimai's gaze. Since Lord Seimai has such high expectations of me, I must also prove myself worthy. Seimai nodded. In that case, the 12 divine generals and I will follow your command. The 12 divine generals responded in unison. We follow Lord Seimai's orders. Kaido's eyes swept over the disciplined 12 divine generals under Seimai's command, feeling a deep sense of envy. As an Onmyoji himself, the spirits he had contracted with were all unruly ancestors. The only obedient one was Miu, but unfortunately, Miu's strength was insufficient and of little use. Madara and Izuna, noticing Kaido's glance, both snorted coldly. Kaido chuckled awkwardly and averted his gaze. They were all ancestors. Better not to provoke them. Composing himself, Kaido floated to the center of the array and formed hand seals. The golden energy connecting Seimai and the 12 divine generals began to flow rapidly once more, linking Kaido as well. His gaze pierced through the array, locking eyes with the Sage of Six Paths and his family outside the array. Please forgive my rudeness. Ramyaku energy continuously flowed from Seimai, enveloping Kaido's spirit in a golden energy cloak. Rise. Kaido pressed his palms together, and golden chains emerged from the array, tightly binding the box of ultimate bliss and Inma's massive body. This battle for Inma's power has ultimately been won by me. The Sage of Six Paths remained silent, showing no intention of leaving. Kid. Indra stepped forward, his expression cold. So you're the one who arrogantly claims to lead the Uchiha clan, regardless of life or death? Facing the progenitor of the Uchiha clan, Kaido showed no hesitation. He smiled confidently and said, "Why not? As long as I always stand at the forefront of my clan, guiding them in the right direction, they will naturally trust me. Very well. I will see for myself whether you truly have the capacity for such a role." Indra's icy expression suddenly shifted, revealing a meaningful smile before he vanished without another word. Brother. Izura, seeing Indra leave so abruptly, turned to the Sage of Six Paths with a troubled expression. Father. Let him be. The Sage of Six Paths had no time to deal with his rebellious eldest son, focusing instead on observing the changes within the array. The golden energy within the array flowed faster and faster, and the scene inside gradually became blurred. Father. Izura sat down cross-legged, his demeanor unusually composed. I suddenly feel that, no matter what the future of the world holds, entrusting everything to the younger generation might not be such a bad idea. What did you say? The Sage of Six Paths turned to stare at Izura. Father, don't look at me like that. Izura's expression was calm and steady. Every time I reclaim the chakra from my reincarnations, it's like experiencing the memories of a lifetime from a descendant. After going through so much, I've started to feel my own convictions wavering. The Sage of Six Paths let out an aged sigh. It's only natural for you to develop your own thoughts. Don't worry, Father. Although I feel some doubts, I haven't yet decided to change my stance. Izura said with a grin. But the outcome here seems inevitable. I should go keep an eye on brother. I have a feeling he might do something unexpected. With that, his figure also vanished. The Sage of Six Paths tightened his grip on his staff, still standing in place and watching the array. Hamura remained silently by his side. I'm starting now. Kaido, standing at the center of the array, shouted as his hands rapidly formed seals. Golden energy began to spread from Inma's feet, covering the massive body. Roar. The box of ultimate bliss, bound by golden chains, let out a deafening roar from the beast mouths on its four sides. Purple energy extended like tentacles from the mouths. Ha! Kaido clapped his hands together. Merge. The purple energy surged out of the box of ultimate bliss, flowing through the nodes of the array before rushing into Inma's body. The ground of the hall trembled once more, and Inma's black eyes glowed with a purple light. Hamura, standing outside the array, withdrew his gaze and said, "Let's go, brother. If we wait until that boy fully controls Inma's power, we might not be able to leave. Let's go." The Sage of Six Paths tapped his staff on the ground, and grey pure land energy began to envelop the two of them. "Leaving so soon, hey Goromo-kun, Hamura-kun?" Seimai's voice came from within the array. "Lord Seimai, I shall take my leave now. I only hope you have not misjudged this boy," the Sage of Six Paths said, his figure fading in and out of the grey mist. Huh? Are they talking about me? Kaido glanced over. Kaido, I know you wish to kill my mother. The Sage of Six Paths met Kaido's gaze. Yes. Will you try to stop me? Kaido asked boldly. I will not stop you. The figures of the Sage of Six Paths and Hamura gradually became transparent. I will be watching. If you can truly kill my mother, then. The grey mist dissipated, and the Sage of Six Paths and Hamura vanished completely. Then what? Kaito was dumbfounded. At least finish your sentence. TCH. He irritably turned his attention back to the erase operation. However, the rest was just a matter of time and effort. Wait, did I forget something? Kaido suddenly realized. What was it? That's right, he exclaimed. I forgot about Minato. Madara and Izuna remained silent. They had forgotten too. Kaido quickly changed his hand seals, temporarily halting the erase operation. Damn it, I wanted to make a perfect impression in front of Lord Mai. Now I'm going to look bad. Kaido felt deeply frustrated. And if I had waited any longer, Minato's soul would have become a permanent part of Inma. Open. Kaido formed seals again, barely managing to make Inma open its mouth. Following the contract's connection, he began the summoning. A glowing light appeared, and a ball of soul fire flew out of Inma's mouth, stopping beside Kaido. Minato? Kaido called softly. I heard everything, Kaido. The soul fire elongated, and Minato's spirit appeared, his face wearing a forced smile as he stared intently at Kaido. Sorry, Minato. Kaido said with an awkward smile, clasping his hands together. Considering this surreal journey has broadened my horizons, I'll let it slide this time. Minato's smile turned genuine as he turned to greet the others with a bow. I am Minato Namikaze. It's an honor to meet you all. The others nodded in acknowledgement. Minato, I'll send you back to Hidden Leaf Village now. You must be worried about Naruto, right? Kaido, still feeling awkward, just wanted Minato to leave quickly. Minato turned to him with a smile, not calling him out, and nodded. That would be best. Thank you. Kaido closed his eyes and pressed his palms together, barely sensing his physical body in Mount Tama through the dimensional barrier. He then sent a signal to his paper clone in Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. Don't forget what you promised me. With those words, Minato was summoned away by the paper clone in Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. Finally, he's gone. Kaido let out a sigh of relief. Ahem, let's continue. Pretending nothing had happened, Kaido addressed the others and restarted the array. Chapter 282, Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. When Minato opened his eyes, he saw Kaido's paper clone studying a damaged puppet on the experimental table. What is this? Minato floated closer to the experimental table, leaned down, and carefully examined the puppet. His expression changed. Is this a human puppet made from a corpse? Yes, this person was once a member of Hidden Leaf Village's route. He joined the Akatsuki to seek revenge for Denzo. Kaido looked up. You came at the right time. You should be quite familiar with the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques, right? Minato smiled modestly. Well, Kushina taught me a few things. Then work with me on this. Kaido pointed at the corpse of Terai. Lady Tsunade was sealed by this guy using the Dead Demon Consuming Seal. Dead Demon Consuming Seal. Minato quickly moved closer to the corpse for a detailed inspection. Jiraiya asked me to undo the seal, and I'm still researching it. Kaido added. So, do you have any ideas on how to break this seal? Minato straightened up, his expression grave. The Dead Demon Consuming Seal is different from the four-symbol seal. It's a sealing technique that requires the caster to expend their entire life force. It will be very difficult to undo. To be honest, after several days of research, I've already found a way to break the seal. Kaido said seriously. Then what are we waiting for? Minato urged excitedly. Hurry and save Lady Tsunade. Kaido shook his head. There is a way to break the seal, but... But what? Minato's excited expression faded. Pervy Sage, Sakura, Granny Tsunade. Suddenly, Kaido heard Naruto shouting loudly outside the door. He glanced at Minato and casually dispelled the barrier in the room. Minato immediately heard Naruto's voice as well. Because of what happened to Dad, I've been staying in the hospital room. I only heard about it today. Naruto. Minato immediately turned and phased through the door. Damn it. Damn it. Outside, Naruto was still yelling. Dad, Granny Tsunade. I will never, ever forgive those bastards. What do I do? Naruto can't see me at all. Minato phased back into the room, looking helplessly at Kaido. You're a spirit now. He doesn't have spiritual energy, so of course he can't see you. Kaido, annoyed by the noise, rubbed his temples and pushed open the door. Uncle Kaido? Kaido, how is it? Lord Kaido. When Kaido opened the door, the people waiting outside rushed forward. Wait, wait. Kaido raised his hand helplessly. Everyone obediently quieted down, their eyes fixed on him. What's going on, Uncle Kaido? Why are you here? Only Naruto was out of the loop, rushing forward. Uncle Kaido, my dad was eaten by that monster. Do you have a way to save him? Alright, alright. Kaido flicked a spark of spiritual energy from his fingertip, enveloping Minato's spirit. Minato immediately appeared beside him. Here, your dad is right here. Dad. So you're okay. Tears welled up in Naruto's eyes as he immediately cried out and lunged forward. But he passed right through Minato's spirit and fell flat on his face. Naruto. Minato quickly tried to help his son up, but his hand passed through Naruto's body. Dad, I thought you were. Woo. Naruto. Dad. Naruto. Kaido looked away, not wanting to deal with the father-son duo anymore. He turned to Jiraiya and said, Jiraiya, you'll need to make the decision about breaking the seal. Jiraiya, sensing something was wrong but still holding on to a sliver of hope, forced a smile and asked, What's the matter? Never mind, come in and I'll explain. Kaido turned around, grabbed Minato and Naruto with one hand each, and tossed them out the door. Jiraiya followed him inside. Kaido closed the door behind them, leaving Sakura and the others outside, looking on eagerly. The dead demon consuming seal is a forbidden technique. I assume you're somewhat familiar with it, Jiraiya, so I'll be blunt. Kaido didn't give Jiraiya any time to prepare. Go ahead. Jiraiya leaned against the wall, his eyes weakly fixed on Terai's corpse on the experimental table. Using this technique consumes the caster's entire life force, so breaking the seal will also consume Lady Tsunada's life force. Kaido explained slowly. Jiraiya suddenly turned his head. Are you saying that even if we break the seal, Tsunada will definitely die? If that's the case, can't we use someone else's life force instead? Unfortunately, no. Kaido shook his head. The structure of the sealing technique is precise. This technique can only be undone from the inside out. Then what's the point of breaking the seal? Jiraiya slumped down, holding his head in his hands. That's why I've prepared two plans. Kaido continued. The first plan, after breaking the seal, Lady Tsunada's strength will likely be reduced to less than 10%, and her lifespan will be significantly shortened. What did you say? Jiraiya immediately stood up and grabbed Kaido's hand. You're saying Tsunada can still live? Jiraiya. Kaido said helplessly, pulling his hand free. She can live, but her strength will be greatly diminished, and her lifespan will be much shorter. Jiraiya spoke with difficulty. As long as she's alive, that's enough. As for her strength, Hidden Leaf Village doesn't rely solely on Tsunada. If we choose the first plan, Lady Tsunada will definitely not be able to maintain her youthful appearance. Kaido added. This. Jiraiya hesitated. What about the second plan? Actually, I recommend the second plan. Kaido began to explain. The second plan is to completely abandon the body. While breaking the seal, we fully consume the body to nourish the soul. After breaking the seal, Lady Tsunada's soul power will actually increase. Only the soul remains? Jiraiya's face fell. That's just death. Kaido firmly denied this. For a non-Myoji, as long as the soul remains, it's not death. Just like Minato. Strictly speaking, he's not dead. What? Didn't I die a long time ago? Minato's head suddenly popped out of the wall. No, you're not dead. You never went to the Pure Land, and your soul hasn't been tainted by its aura. Kaido explained seriously. This. I guess that's true. Minato fully emerged from the wall, stroking his chin as he recalled. When I used the dead demon-consuming seal, I was swallowed by the Shinigami. After coming out, you immediately intercepted me, and then we formed a contract. I never went to the Pure Land. Are you saying that Tsunada should form a contract with you, just like Minato? Jiraiya immediately looked at Kaido with suspicion. What's wrong with being like Minato? Kaido argued. For the past 2 years, haven't you all forgotten that he was once dead? What's so good about not being able to eat or drink? Tsunada would be furious if she couldn't drink. Jiraiya refused to accept this. Who said she can't eat or drink? Making a vessel that can eat and drink is a piece of cake for me. Kaido's voice trailed off, and he guiltily turned to look at Minato. Kaido. Minato said with a fake smile. Why didn't you tell me about this? I'd like a body that can eat and drink too. Ha. Ha ha. Sorry, I forgot. Kaido quickly changed the subject. Right now, the most important thing is to discuss how to save Lady Tsunada. Jiraiya, you need to make the decision. This. I don't know. Jiraiya frantically grabbed his hair, pacing back and forth in the room, muttering to himself. Why do I have to choose? Why can't there just be one answer? If I choose the first option, Tsunada might not be able to accept growing old. The second option. She wouldn't really be alive. Chapter 283, Jiraiya, who had been pacing around the room, suddenly stopped and said solemnly to Kaido. Let Tsunada make the decision herself. Kaido was stunned for a moment, then understood. So, in the end, Jiraiya, you've chosen the first option. Yes. I can't decide life or death for Tsunada. Jiraiya clenched his fists. All I know is that if it were me, I would choose to live, even if it meant clinging to life in a diminished state. I understand. Kaito raised an eyebrow but didn't try to persuade him further. Then we'll proceed as you've decided, Jiraiya. However, I'll need ink infused with chakra to draw the necessary array. Jiraiya nodded silently, turned around, and opened the door to give an order. Soon, a waiting Anbu ninja brought the specially prepared ink and brush. Kaito took the ink and closed the door again. He instructed Jiraiya to move the experimental table to the corner of the room and place Terai's corpse in the center of the floor. Holding the brush dipped in ink, Kaito began to draw the array. Dense, intricate symbols started from the hollow chest of Terai's corpse, spreading across the floor until they covered nearly half the room. Done. Kaito stood up and pointed to two circular patterns at the edge of the array. Jiraiya, place your hands here later and follow my instructions to channel chakra into the array. Understood. Jiraiya didn't ask any questions and immediately crouched down, placing his hands on the circular patterns as instructed. Prepare. Kaito began forming hand seals. Spiritual energy flowed through the array, causing some of the symbols on the floor to emit a faint glow. Start channeling chakra. At Kaito's prompt, Jiraiya's chakra began to flow rapidly from his palms. In an instant, the entire array seemed to come alive. Countless symbols began to move, continuously drilling into the chest of Terai's corpse. The sudden massive consumption of chakra left Jiraiya gasping for breath. Jiraiya, hold on. Kaito reminded him again. Jiraiya gritted his teeth, forcing his body to extract more chakra and pour it into the array. Crack, crack, crack. Terai's corpse began to tremble. Numerous symbols swirled across his body before finally disappearing into his chest. After a long while, a white light began to glow from the corpse's chest, growing brighter and brighter until it filled the entire room with pure white light. Jiraiya, it's over. Kaito's voice came through, and Jiraiya collapsed to the floor, completely drained. As the light faded, Jiraiya quickly propped himself up and looked toward the center of the array. Beside Terai's corpse lay Tsunada's body, now aged and withered. Tsunada. Jiraiya crawled over to Tsunada's side, his trembling hand reaching out to check her breathing. She's breathing. She's still breathing. He muttered, tears streaming down his face as he laughed and cried at the same time. Kaito turned and opened the door, gesturing to Sakura, who was anxiously waiting outside. You're Tsunada's disciple, right? Come in. Yes. Sakura rushed into the room and gasped when she saw Tsunada's condition. She immediately began treating her. How is the Hokage? Was the seal undone? Is the Hokage alright? Hokage-sama. Granny Tsunada. The other Hidden Leaf Village ninjas waiting outside immediately began clamoring with questions, and Naruto stood on his tiptoes, trying to peek into the room. Kaito frowned, and Minato quickly emerged from the wall to calm the crowd. After announcing that Tsunada was still alive, Minato, Naruto, and Kaito left the hospital together. Once they returned to Minato's home, Minato couldn't wait to ask. Isn't it time to fulfill your promise, Kaito? Kaito lazily slumped onto the sofa and replied. I know. But right now, I don't have the materials to create a vessel. What materials do you need? I'll go find them right away. Minato looked like he couldn't wait a moment longer. Naruto, who was sitting nearby, asked confusedly. Dad, what are you two talking about? Your father made a deal with me, asking me to summon your mother. But right now, I don't have the materials to create bodies for your father and mother. Kaito looked at Naruto, and his eyes suddenly lit up. To be honest, the best material for Minato and Kushina is you, their son. What do you mean? Me? Naruto patted his chest. What do you need me to do? Just tell me. Naruto, don't listen to him. Minato urgently tried to stop him, then glared at Kaito. Kaito. It's your flesh and blood. Kaito said with a smile, looking at Naruto. Oh, I see. No problem. Naruto immediately rolled up his left sleeve, exposing his arm, and grabbed a kunai to cut into it. Naruto. Stop. Minato reached out to stop him, but his hand passed through Naruto's arm. His expression changed drastically, and he shouted angrily. Stop. I absolutely won't allow this. Huh? Kaito's puzzled voice came through. Minato snapped back to reality and noticed that his right hand had turned purple and was firmly gripping Naruto's hand. What's going on? Kaito immediately became interested and leaned in to examine Minato's purple hand closely. This is... He looked up excitedly. Congratulations, Minato. What exactly is going on? Minato didn't let go of Naruto's hand and turned to look at Kaito seriously. And Kaito, your earlier behavior has made me quite angry. What do you mean? Kaito didn't seem to understand. Because of Naruto? I wasn't lying. His flesh and blood really are the best materials for you two. And that kind of injury is easy to heal, isn't it? Exactly, Dad. I'm fine. If a little bit of my flesh and blood can give you and Mom better bodies, what's the problem? Naruto also protested. Never mind, you wouldn't understand. Minato sighed. As a father, I could never stand by and watch my child hurt himself, especially not for our sake. If Naruto really did that, neither I nor Kushina would be happy. Well, that's for you to decide. Kaito said dismissively, his eyes still fixed on Minato's purple hand. The important thing now is the mutation in your soul. Tell me, what exactly have you been through? Isn't your main body over there? Minato sat down with Naruto, still holding his hand. Naruto, sensing that his father was genuinely angry, now behaved very obediently. It's too far away. My main body didn't relay much information across dimensions. Kaito urged. Hurry up and tell me. I'll tell you after you finish what you promised me. Minato smiled. I know how you are. Once something catches your interest, you forget everything else. Fine, I get it. Kaito immediately stood up, quickly reached out, and touched Naruto's head. If we can't use flesh and blood, hair will have to do. With that, he used his spiritual energy to gather a clump of golden hair and floated upstairs, rushing into the guest room. Ah! My hair. I look like a monk now. Kaito closed the door, blocking out Naruto's agonized screams. Chapter 284, in the Hall of Inma, the array was still operating. The purple energy that had erupted from the box of ultimate bliss was rapidly shuttling through the array. Finally, the last wisp of purple energy flew out of the box of ultimate bliss. After undergoing several transformations within the array, it rushed into the body of Inma. This step is complete. The power of Inma has finally been unified. Kaito exclaimed with joy. Next is the engraving of the contract. Let's continue. Inma said with a smile. Yes. Kaito clasped his hands together and closed his eyes once more. The ground trembled, and the golden dragon vein energy flowing through the array began to circulate even faster. Golden light started at Inma's feet, gradually dyeing his entire body in gold. When Inma's entire body was covered in gold, the array on the ground began to move. Countless incantation scripts started to flow, and the array rapidly shrank toward Inma. Eventually, all the incantation scripts climbed onto Inma's body. Kaito opened his eyes, and his spirit floated upward, reaching the spot between Inma's brows. He extended his right hand and pressed it against the large character, King, on the crown of Inma's head. At the same time, his left hand continuously formed hand seals, and he chanted the true words, Rin, Pyo, Tu, Sha, Ke, Jin, Retsu, Zei, Zen. The golden light enveloping Inma's body gradually seeped into his form. The incantation scripts covering his body shone brightly before slowly fading away. The 5-pointed stars in Kaito's eyes spun continuously. By the power of the law, so it shall be. Inma's eyes flashed red, and the same rotating 5-pointed star pattern appeared in them. The contract is established. Kaito withdrew his hand, and his spirit floated back down. It seems Kaito has succeeded completely. Inma said, fanning himself as he walked over. Kaito quickly bowed deeply. Lord Inma, I am immensely grateful for your assistance. No need for thanks. Inma smiled elegantly, then glanced back at Tomomonome and the 12 divine generals. I shall take my leave now. The rest is up to you, Kaito. Kaito straightened up. Understood. Farewell, Lord Inma. Thank you all for your help. Then, until we meet again, Kaito. With that, Inma, along with Tomomonome and the 12 divine generals, vanished from Kaito's sight. Now, it's just us left. Kaito turned around. Madara-senpai, Izuna-senpai. What do you plan to do next? Madara crossed his arms. Now that we have the power of Inma, we no longer need to fear the Sage of Six Paths and his brother. Let's head to the moon. We will go to the moon. Kaito glanced around the grand hall and clasped his hands together. But first, we need to secure this hall. Inma. The previously motionless Inma began to move, step by step, toward the throne at the far end of the hall. As he walked, the iron chandeliers hanging from the ceiling lit up one by one with an eerie blue flame. Finally, Inma ascended the steps and sat upon the throne. A rumbling sound echoed from beneath the ground, and all the iron lanterns shaped like evil spirits in the hall moved on their own to the corresponding stone pillars. The red flames that had previously burned in them gradually turned into the same blue as the chandeliers. The dark blue flames continued to light up, spreading from the inside out until they reached the entrance of the hall. The thick darkness in the front half of the hall disappeared. The Amaterasu flames left by Indra gradually extinguished, and even the floor that had been split by Hagoromo began to slowly mend. Boom! All the blue flames suddenly surged, turning into a bluish-white color. The entire hall became much brighter. With the complete power of Inma, the various functions of this hall have begun to operate. Kaito lowered his hands. From now on, The Hall of Inma will continuously move through this alternate dimension. Even the Sage of Six Paths won't be able to find it. Izuna looked up at the flames of the chandeliers, then shifted his gaze downward. Good. That makes it safe. Of course, it's safe. And even if it is found, it won't matter. The power of Inma will repel any intruders. Kaito turned to look at Inma seated on the high platform. Even though much of Inma's power has been lost, it is still the most powerful force on this planet. This will be my greatest reliance, and the greatest reliance of the Uchiha clan. Kaito's excitement was evident. My next plan is to transfer all our clansmen from the Pure Land to this place. That's a good idea. It will also prevent the Sage of Six Paths and Indra from scheming anything. Izuna glanced at the seemingly endless hall. There's certainly enough space here. Then I'll return first. Kaito formed hand seals. I'll summon you both later. Go ahead. Mount Hama, Uchiha residence. In a dimly lit secret room, Kaito's body sat cross-legged on the floor. Suddenly, a flash of spiritual light appeared, and a illusory soul emerged above his head. I'm back. Kaito's spirit directly merged into his body, and he slowly opened his eyes. Sigh. It's really best not to stay away from the body for too long, he thought as he stood up and stretched his numb limbs. I'll need some time to recover. Bending down to pick up the two spirit doll vessels on the floor, Kaito opened the secret room door and headed to the laboratory. After quickly summoning Madara and Izuna and placing them into the spirit doll vessels, Kaito pushed open the door and stepped into the sunlight outside, taking a deep breath of the crisp winter air. As a living spirit, going to a place like the Hall of Inma really isn't very comfortable. He sighed, then turned to smile at Madara and Izuna, who had followed him out of the laboratory. You two probably didn't feel that way, right? You're back? Kaito turned toward the voice and saw Chiri and Yuri walking together from the other side of the corridor. Kaito. Yuri leaped into the air, gracefully crossing the courtyard and landing in Kaito's arms. Welcome back. Yuri tightly wrapped her arms around Kaito's neck, looking up into his eyes. Ah, I'm back. Kaito placed one hand on her slender waist and used the other to pat her head. Did everything go smoothly? I was really worried about you. Yuri's feet touched the ground, but her arms remained around his neck. Don't worry, everything went well. Kaito smiled and lowered his head, touching his forehead to hers. That's good. Yuri released his neck and took his hand. Now, tell me all the details. Do I have to? Kaito let himself be pulled along. I'll explain everything to everyone at the next yokai gathering. Kaito. Yuri turned her head, a faint smile on her face. What is it? Kaito blinked. Tell me all the details. Right now. Yuri spoke each word slowly, her eyes flashing with a cold light. Understood. Kaito's instincts screamed at him to comply, and he quickly agreed. That's more like it. Yuri's smile immediately became more genuine. Chapter 285, Hidden Leaf Village. Minato and Naruto's home. Guest room. Kaito's clone, who was in the guest room crafting a vessel, heard a knock on the door. He stood up and opened it to find Naruto, wearing a headband, his face puffed up in anger. Naruto? What's wrong? Kaito asked in surprise. Humphrey. Naruto continued to glare at him, still fuming. Kaito raised an eyebrow in surprise. You're mad. You were willing to give up your flesh and blood earlier, but now you're upset about your hair? It's not about that, believe it. Naruto reached up and yanked off his headband, revealing a bald patch on his head that made him look like a kappa. Look what you did. I might as well just shave it all off, believe it. He ran his hand over the smooth, bare spot on his scalp. If people see me like this, they'll definitely make fun of me. PFFT. Kaito turned his head away to hide his laughter. You're laughing at me. Naruto narrowed his eyes. No, I'm not. Kaito said, still looking away. It's fine. You still have some hair left. Just wear the headband, and no one will notice. You totally laughed just now. Naruto stomped his foot. No, I didn't. I need your help with crafting the vessel. Come inside. Kaito said seriously, then quickly turned and walked back into the room. Humphrey. Naruto put his headband back on and followed him into the room. What do you need me to do? I need some of your blood. Kaito gestured for Naruto to come closer. Give me your wrist. Okay. Naruto obediently held out his wrist. Kaito extended his hand and used his spiritual energy to make a small cut on Naruto's wrist. He then formed a claw shape with his hand and pulled upward, drawing blood from the wound. The blood floated in the air, forming a growing sphere. Kaito wrapped the blood in spiritual energy and used his other hand to swipe over Naruto's wrist, instantly stopping the bleeding. What's this for? Naruto squinted as he leaned closer to the floating blood. Step back. Kaido picked up two small dolls made from Naruto's hair from the table and enveloped them in the sphere of blood. Then, he placed his hands on either side of the blood sphere, and a burst of spiritual light erupted from his palms. The blood began to boil and churn, shrinking in volume until it was completely absorbed into the hair dolls. The golden dolls now had a red glow, and the blood solidified into tiny, intricate incantation scripts on their surfaces. It's done. Kaido opened his palm, letting the two dolls rest in his hand. Is that all? Naruto reached out to touch the dolls, but Kaido quickly pulled his hand away and asked, "Where's Minato?" "Dad." Naruto instinctively scratched his head under the headband. "He's downstairs, I think." He then shouted at the top of his lungs, "Dad. Is it done, Kaido?" Minato's spirit floated up through the floor. "Dad." Naruto jumped back in surprise. "Ha ha ha. Sorry, I got a little too eager." Minato laughed sheepishly. "It's done." Kaido showed Minato the two dolls in his hand, then quickly put them away, looking at Minato with a hint of pride. "But you still owe me an explanation about what happened earlier with Inma. You really don't let anything slide, do you?" Minato sank back through the floor. "Let's talk downstairs." Humphrey. Kaito strode confidently down the hallway and descended the stairs. When he and Naruto reached the living room, Minato was already sitting on the couch, waving at Kaito. "Let's summon your wife now," Kaito said with a smirk, addressing Minato's spirit. "So, your main body has left that place, and you can communicate with it now." Minato immediately understood what Kaito meant. Kaito turned and began the summoning ritual. His Mangekyo Sharingan spun, and a portal to the Pure Land opened within the array. Kaito formed hand seals and chanted the true words. Then, he tossed one of the dolls into the array. A ball of soul fire shot out of the Pure Land portal and merged into the small doll. The doll twitched and suddenly grew, transforming into a woman with long red hair in an instant. Kushina. Minato's spirit immediately floated over to her. "Minato?" Kushina opened her eyes to see Minato's slightly goofy smile. "Where are we?" She turned her head to look around but was immediately drawn to the young boy standing nearby. A strong intuition surged in her heart, and she couldn't help but ask, "Is that Naruto?" Since Kushina appeared, Naruto had been frozen, staring at her without blinking. Now, hearing her call his name, he blinked and rushed forward, passing through Minato's spirit to hug Kushina tightly around the waist. "Mom." He buried his face in her shoulder. "I've always wanted to meet you." "Naruto, I'm sorry," Kushina said softly, tears welling up in her eyes as she gently stroked Naruto's back. "I'm sorry you had to grow up alone." "Don't apologize." Naruto lifted his head, tears streaming down his face but smiling. "Even though I went through a lot of hard times, I also met some really good people. And for the past 2 years, Dad's been with me." "Minato?" Kushina looked over Naruto's shoulder at Minato. "What's going on?" "Kushina, we'll have plenty of time to catch up," Minato said, his voice and expression filled with tenderness. "But not right now. We're not the only ones here." "Huh? Do we have guests?" Kushina turned and saw Kaito. "Oh, I'm sorry. I was so emotional earlier that I didn't notice you. That was rude of me. Long time no see, Kushina-ne. I'm Kaito." Kaito greeted her with a familiar smile. "You're Mikoto's little brother, Kaito?" Kushina unconsciously reached out to pat Naruto's head, her smile becoming more genuine. "It's been so long. I'm sorry for being rude earlier." "Don't worry about it. I don't mind." Kaito noticed Naruto's headband starting to slip and quickly tossed the other doll onto Minato's spirit, then formed a hand seal. In a flash of light, Minato finally regained a physical body. "I won't disturb your family reunion any longer," Kaito said to Minato. "Don't forget to let me examine your soul mutation tomorrow." "Got it. Thank you." Minato nodded. Kaito gave Kushina another nod, then turned and walked up the stairs, entering the guest room. "Ah, my headband. Poor Naruto. How did you go bald so young?" Ignoring the commotion downstairs, Kaito closed the door behind him. Chapter 286, at Mount Hama. After completing a brief discussion with the yokai, Kaito left home with Izuna and Madara, heading to the small island outside Mount Hama where they had previously battled Otsutsuki Ishiki. "I'm starting now." Kaito first entered Ryumyaku communication mode, then knelt on one knee and slapped the ground with both hands. Summoning technique, Gate of the Hall of Inma. Accompanied by a sound resembling the wailing of demons, 2 massive gates that seemed to blot out the sky slowly rose from the ground. Kaito stood up, clasped his hands together, and shouted, "Open!" Creak, creak. The enormous gates, which seemed endless to Kaito, slowly opened, revealing the eerie interior of the Hall of Inma, illuminated by flickering ghostly flames. The next step. Kaito turned around and formed hand seals. His Sharingan spun rapidly, projecting an array onto the ground. As expected, opening a passage to the Pure Land has suddenly become more difficult. Kaito said. The Sage of Six Paths is also wary of me. According to the plan, we'll use our ocular power to enhance your technique. Izuna and Madara simultaneously formed hand seals, activating their Mangekyo Sharingan. The resonance between the three pairs of Sharingan was guided by Kaito, and their ocular power gradually stacked. The array on the ground spun faster and faster. Finally, Kaito clasped his hands together again. Two beams of tangible light shot out from deep within the Hall of Inma, passing through the gates and projecting onto the array. A crack finally opened in the center of the array, and the passage to the Pure Land began to expand. Kaito's hands moved swiftly, and he bit his right thumb, then knelt down and pressed his bloodied palm onto the array. By the call of blood, awaken, slumbering souls of the Uchiha. Crack. The passage to the Pure Land suddenly widened, and countless glowing soul fires poured out of the passage in an unending stream. At the same time, a pulling force emanated from the open gates of the Hall of Inma, drawing all the soul fires inside. The soul fires emerging from the Pure Land were densely packed, flying over Kaito's head and continuously entering the Hall of Inma, forming a river of light in the air. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, half an hour. Finally, the soul fires emerging from the Pure Land passage began to thin out. The last soul fire appeared, gently touched Kaito's forehead, and then entered the Hall of Inma. That should be all, right? Kaito stood up, about to close the passage, when a familiar figure suddenly shot out of the passage at an unexpected speed. How can a gathering of the Uchiha clan be complete without its founder? Indra floated in midair, resisting the pulling force from the Hall of Inma, and looked down at his three descendants with a proud expression. Lord Indra? Kaito closed the passage to the Pure Land and stopped the pulling force from the Hall of Inma. He looked up at Indra's proud face and couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Aren't you an Otsutsuki? The Uchiha clan was founded by me. I am also Indra Uchiha. Indra declared haughtily. His tone and expression made it seem as though the Uchiha clan should be grateful for his declaration. Whatever surname you choose is none of my concern. Feel free to do as you please. Kaito turned around, and a golden mist spread around him, enveloping Madara and Izuna. The three of them walked toward the gates of the Hall of Inma. Inside the hall, shadowy figures filled the space. Kaito and the other two slowly entered. As they crossed the threshold of the gates, the noise and commotion inside the hall immediately reached their ears. The Uchiha clan members inside were in the midst of a lively family reunion. Cries, laughter, shouts, and the sounds of scuffles all mingled together. As Kaito and the other two stepped inside, Indra, still standing outside the gates, was stunned for a moment. His face darkened as he tried to rush into the hall. Thud. The gates, which had allowed Kaito and the others to pass freely, now blocked Indra's entry. How is this possible? Indra couldn't believe it. He reached out and knocked on the invisible barrier. Lord Indra, do you need something? Kaito suddenly turned around to look at Indra outside the gates. Let me in. Indra commanded. I'm sorry. Kaito said politely with a smile. For the safety of the Uchiha clan, I'm afraid I can't let you in. After all, you're on the Sage of Six Paths side, aren't you? I'm not on the old man's side. Indra's expression grew even darker. And what do you know, brat? If it weren't for me, those guys wouldn't have been so easily brought out of the Pure Land. So, Lord Indra, you actually want to stand on our side? What an honor. Kaito said, still polite but with a hint of distance. Brat. I never said I wanted to stand on your side. Indra vehemently denied. That's a shame. Kaito shrugged. Then please do as you wish. With that, he turned to leave. Wait. Indra quickly stopped him. Is there something else, Lord Indra? Kaito curled his lips slightly and looked at Indra again. Fine. I need a place to hide from the old man and Azura. Indra said, his face dark. And? If you pass my test, I might not refuse if you ask for my help. How about that? I see. So, you and the Sage of Six Paths, as well as Lord Azura, have parted ways. Kaito remarked. Humphrey. Indra sneered. I was never on the same path as them to begin with. In that case, please come in, Lord Indra. Kaito extended his hand. Humphrey. Indra took Kaito's hand and stepped inside the gates. After letting go, he snorted again. The hall had fallen silent, and everyone was watching as Kaito and Indra walked in together. Chapter 287, Deep within the halls of the King of Hell's palace, the great King Inma suddenly stood up from his high platform, releasing an overwhelming pressure that suffocated all the Uchiha present in the hall. In an instant, even the air seemed to tremble, and all the Uchiha found their minds going blank. After a long while, as the oppressive feeling gradually receded like a tide, The deceased Uchiha slowly regained their senses. Kaido's voice rang out at just the right moment. This world is the same. The strong hold more power to speak. So, can everyone now listen to what I have to say? In the crowd, Akira Uchiha, who had once viewed his son as a disgrace, watched from afar. His expression shifted several times before he couldn't help but mutter. Humphrey, that brat is now showing off in front of me. You old fool. A young-looking woman beside him suddenly reached out and tightly pinched his ear, giving him a cold glare. I've already heard everything from Mikoto. Why did you treat my son like that? Kazumi. That brat not only caused your death but also didn't inherit any of the Uchiha clan's ninja talents. Akira covered his ear, his face stern as he stubbornly complained. Besides, that kid has never respected me as his father. I don't care about any of that. All I know is that he's my son. Humphrey. You old fool. You can live by yourself from now on. Kazumi Uchiha turned and walked over to Mikoto, turning her back on Akira. Mom, father, he. Mikoto glanced back at her father, who kept looking over but pretended not to care. Don't mind that old fool. Kazumi patted Mikoto's hand. Mikoto, I want to thank you for taking care of Kaido as he grew up. Mikoto smiled and shook her head. Mom, I'm also Kaido's sister. It's just a pity that you've also had a hard life. Kazumi sighed. It's fine, it's all in the past now. Mikoto said, looking at the confident and spirited Kaido in the distance. Kaido is doing well now, and I can rest easy knowing he's taking care of Sasuke and Itachi. Standing at the front of the crowd, Kaido, seeing that no one else was speaking out of turn, smiled gently and began introducing the people beside him. The two seniors standing beside me should be recognized by many here. The former head of the Uchiha clan, Madara Uchiha, and his brother, Izuna Uchiha. Madara and Izuna scanned the crowd, nodding at some familiar faces. In the distance, a family stood together, and 4 young boys were waving frantically at the two. Madara, seeing his 4 younger brothers who had died young, showed a rare flicker of emotion on his usually stoic face. Izuna smiled and pulled Madara toward their family. As the 2 brothers walked over, the 4 younger brothers couldn't wait any longer and rushed through the crowd, arms outstretched to hug them. However, they passed right through each other, leaving the 4 boys looking up at them with wronged expressions. Kaido, watching from afar, smiled broadly and then tossed out 4 paper dolls. A flash of spiritual light later, the 6 brothers, whose appearances varied greatly in age, finally embraced each other tightly. Kaido turned his gaze away and finally looked at Indra, who was standing alone to the side. When Indra met his gaze, he immediately raised his head and pretended to look away casually. Kaido smirked and walked over to Indra. Finally, let me formally introduce this individual. His voice echoed throughout the hall. The eldest son of the Sage of 6 Paths, the progenitor of the Uchiha clan, and the ancestor of everyone present here. Lord Indra. What? Ancestor? Is this true? Our Uchiha clan really descends from the Sage of 6 Paths? I thought that was just something people said to scare others. At Kaido's introduction, the crowd erupted in chatter once more, many looking at the proud Indra with disbelief. Father. Lord Indra. A group of ancient-looking deceased individuals stepped out from the crowd and knelt before Indra. Kaido, seeing a middle-aged man among them who called Indra father, glanced at the youthful-looking Indra and twitched his lips, silently taking a step back. Next, Kaido began using Indra's status to his advantage. The progenitor of the Uchiha clan supports my leadership of the entire clan. What objections could any of you possibly have? Indra, for reasons unknown, did not refute Kaido's claims. Though he didn't explicitly voice his support, his silence was taken as tacit approval. Kaido didn't delve too deeply into Indra's thoughts. Now that Indra had voluntarily entered the King of Hell's palace, he had effectively placed his safety in Kaido's hands.